pictures.
Did you ever go with Todd? I didn't know you were saying, awesome. He said he was gonna try to process that, try to go hard and make up his name.
Yeah.
That's kind of a mess there.
Is it?
Yeah, if you go upstairs, it looks like all those are after the ball.
All dresses.
Yeah, at least for that far right side.
Yeah, the best thing to do in a situation like that, you get a section of the body,
Yeah,
swinging dresses.
but he was asking us to like drop them out. I don't want you to see it, especially something like that, but. I said, at least if you did the engineering, wanted to figure out. At least what has to be done.
I think it's a mess.
Yeah, I've never messed with anything. Usually it's special companies can take care of all that stuff.
Well, he's going in there now with the trigger, so. That's-
Yeah, just some of these things, stuff like that, it's crazy.
Hundred some odd page packet.
Fun times.
There's a full.
I gotta see what I'm not seeing for her.
Hi, Betsy. How are you?
But.
We're not always first choice for an evening's entertainment. Hi, Deanne.
Hi there. My video still keeps going wonky. I did some adjustment on it, but every once in a while it goes out. So I will
Okay,
be flashing you this evening.
we will see what happens with it because you never can tell.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. The first reading, what are we doing?
So if you want,
Talking about the gateway,
Here's a packet.
gateway commercial one.
okay, so there's a whole entire packet if you want it. Here's your memo that you. Recently.
Right.
That's in case they need to extend the moratorium. It will be added as an amendment
Oh, yeah.
in the beginning. In case we might be. These are the public comments from. This is another amendment.
Where's this?
That is.
I know we table everything to
Continue, I'm good, how are you?
This new stuff or just all the old stuff?
Well, there's some of them.
Oh, no, I've got the.
Yeah.
This is the ones. Oh, I looked at my, yeah, it's right, there's a couple of the big sector.
Yeah, and all of this in front of you.
In front of me,
Yeah.
in front of the name meeting, now it's in front of me.
Yes.
Okay, what's with the table in the back of your car? I'm just
Um,
curious.
I was taking it.
I peeked, it's all wrapped.
My sister has been using it for years, and then she had it in storage. And then she moved twice, but didn't want it in the new place. So I'm trying to get it back in my storage, but I have no idea where the key, my storage key is. So it's.
So you carry it with you
It's got a
wherever,
ride, yeah.
like a puppy.
And it's so nice that those Honda Fits have such nice cargo area.
Well, you see the legs sticking up and it's like. So, at least it's not like that lamp from that movie, you know, where it's the blade, what's the Christmas movie with the, I don't know, we have to, I saw it, we don't.
I think you're right. Good, thanks. How are you, sir?
Well, that's just-
I'll keep your blood sugar up. Sounded like Winterfest went well.
Yeah, I was busy.
Good, good.
Busy people actually like playing hockey off, lake, go figure. I don't know where all you people came from.
In the wind.
All you crazy Midwesterners. Like, oh, this is great. I think it was windy out there in the morning. I'm like, oh, sorry about the wind, guys. They're like. "It's a virus." Bothers me as a skier, so.
Pulling through, that bothers us.
Yeah.
Crummy ice. Crummy ice fun. No, it was very well.
Cool, cool. Good to hear it.
I think we proved that. I think we may have proven the concept there, so.
Very good.
So we should pencil it in for next year?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It gets bigger and bigger every year. This is
That's good.
this is second. Everybody's saying this was the first.
Well, the first time it did not like, I think what people were thinking.
Well, it was all over town. There was actually food truck at Village Hall.
Yeah. Remember, yeah, it was more than 1.5. Yes. No, it was.
Hey there, son.
Pretty good, and I went and visited, the one at Lake Jill on some kind of week before, which is a 3-day event. It's 16 race. 3 divisions, like,
Massive.
so took lots of pictures and notes and stuff, not that we would ever go that crazy, but.
Were they sponsored by Patch or something?
Yeah, it's, yeah, the house, but, and then.
Yay. Hey, John.
Yeah, they've got the big lake.
It's $980. They started registration 2 weeks, the volunteers 2 weeks after the tournament. It sells out within 48 hours.
Okay, good to know.
This one is.
They, I was gonna send out.
Yeah, it was.
It's good to see when you go.
Ryder getting everything he needs.
We got more.
Okay.
Yep, Deanne's here.
Loving it.
So.
Because I roll towards you in this building.
It is, are you?
Not warm,
Sorry.
not
Oh, my goodness.
Freezing.
fingertips are still bit. Yeah.
It's like the song I never.
Like, all right.
Those guys are.
We're forgiven unless we get the lawsuit against the.
Where's your magic wand? We could have used it.
Oh,
Yeah. No, these things take time. Yeah. We're not just gonna shove them in the big room and let them fend for themselves.
Yeah.
No, it's being organized.
No, no.
Did you want my one to start on the end? Did you leave that? Oh, no, we just tracked it. Just plug it in and then. Would you like some?
I just said. Hey.
Hi, Mary.
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
Good.
Still me.
Square foot lot or something.
No, that would be SFLO or something. What is SFLA?
Square foot living area.
Living area.
But
If they want to make it more. it doesn't.
I know.
Why bother,
It's right behind.
right?
So
Yes.
Slide in the homes, that like it doesn't, you know, we have any wood.
yeah.
I moved to adjourn. So is that too early, Jody? We're gonna open it. I moved to adjourn. Too soon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're a tough crowd up there.
Yeah.
I say.
Okay.
I don't know. Doesn't
See,
mean-
I didn't, yeah.
I don't know, I was looking at that.
I looked at
So it's pretty-
all
I got that.
It's not explained anymore.
We'll have that later.
Yeah.
We going to exceed.
I'm showing 6:01 PM, so let's get this party started. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Georgetown to order. It is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. Let's all start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call is next. I am Lynette Kelsey, Police Judge. Rob Connell.
Here.
Deanne Powell. You're muted. I know, I see waving.
Sorry about that. I pushed the button and it didn't do anything.
Yep,
I'm here.
thank you. John Jennings. Paul Hinton is not here yet. Mary Smith. Rich Barrows is also not here, but we have a quorum. So carrying on, agenda approval. I know we have a few things to add to the agenda. Let me just list them. Yeah, just a couple, so a couple of action items. I'm calling the resolution to extend the moratorium, action item number 3A, just to keep things in line, should we need it. And then there's action item number 7 is contract for services with Luke Hecker, and that is for law enforcement consultation services. And then we also have under staff items, we've got the Strauss Park update from Bob Hamilton. Anything else?
Okay, I'll ask, are we doing exec session today?
No.
Okay, cool.
I know you're disappointed.
Yeah, crushed. I can see that, yeah.
I had to run John tonight. If you guys said yes, you would have killed me.
The Strauss Park update was gonna be under number 2.
Oh. Okay. That,
See, the agenda's getting shorter and shorter.
okay. All right. Anything else?
Dean's got a hand up.
Yes, Deanne.
Last week we were talking about a short-term rental that had 2 houses on the same lot. I would like an update on that and on the sound system, please. And also, we were talking about affordable housing and how our the AMI was lumped in with Denver, and you were going to check on, would it be more beneficial to our people to go with the state's average income rather than the Denver's? And I'd like to hear a report on that, please.
Okay, I have been looking into that, but I don't have anything prepared for tonight. I can have it prepared for next meeting. I don't believe there is an update on sound system at this time.
Yep, we do. We have.
Oh, you do?
We have a mini one.
Okay, all right. And then the update on the STR, if there is any? Okay,
And the ice driving policies, I think we were gonna add, right?
I'll give them, these are all be understandable.
they're already in the administrator's report, so, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended, dated February 28th, 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, you're talking as amended, right?
Yeah.
That's what you said, yes, okay, just checking. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended, all in favor say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Great. Audience business. Members of the audience have 5 minutes to present any matter of interest not already on the agenda. Is there anyone here with audience business?
The biggest audience we've got.
Okay,
We're gonna talk about 4-day work week.
seeing none, we will move on. Next, we have the payables, and these are from February 3rd through February 23rd, 2023. Any questions or comments on the payables?
Good. The end and then.
I don't
questions.
see Well, the hands up.
I'll
Yes.
make a motion.
Oh, hang on, Dan.
under administration, it talks about, the copier lease and maintenance. How often do we have maintenance done on that?
It's the monthly charge. It's not for them to come out and. We have a contract for them to come out and fix things, but it's for a number of copies made. And whether it be black and white and copies or color, we're charged. For numbers, so.
I just knew a couple years ago, we were having trouble with the copier, and I wondered if we needed to possibly consider getting a new one. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the payables?
I'll make a motion to approve the payables dated February 3rd through February 23rd, 2023. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payables. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The minutes that we have before us tonight are from our last meeting, which was a regular meeting on February 14th, 2023. Any comments or questions, corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes dated February 14th, 2023. Second.
I would like to have a little bit added to them. I'm not ready to vote on that yet.
They've already.
Okay,
Oh, I just needed to. Sorry, I accidentally muted you, Dan,
Did that do
okay,
it?
now you're good, now you're good.
Okay. Under staff items, clear on the last page, it was reported that the police department gave us the year-end report. It doesn't say that we all agreed to wait until Marshall Williams could be present to go over it. And I think that should be in there. And nothing was mentioned about, farther back in the staff things tonight, it's mentioned, but it's not mentioned in the minutes from last time that they're looking for the larger backhoe and possibly selling equipment, and that Lynette suggested we offer it to the Plumer Empire first. And I think
that was
are significant and should be in there.
That was not an action item, and so that's under staff, it was discussion, so I don't believe that that should be in there.
as we've also, we've gone over this before, every single thing that gets mentioned that, you know, under staff items is usually, most of the things are already in the administrator's report and task list. They're just being highlighted. I don't, if it's not in the administrator's report or the task list, I think it bears
But it
mentioning.
we were talking about those items. I think it's important, especially the thing about the equipment and selling it, because that shows us the point where it was starting to be discussed, so that if in the future we're looking back over, gee, why did we get rid of that? We can see that it started on February 14th of this year rather than any other time. So I do think it should be mentioned in the minutes. Because we discussed a lot of those things for quite a while.
Okay, how does the rest of the board feel?
I think it's okay if the comment is added about your suggestion, but the other items that were in the written report that was provided. It's in the written report that was provided, so
Okay,
it will just be collectively agreed on. Thanks, Rob.
I agree with you.
okay. So, sounds like everybody else would like to mention the suggestion to offer any equipment that we're getting rid of to give first choice to Silver Plume and Empire, and the others are just included in the published report.
Hold
So,
on. I just want to make a comment.
okay,
I understand that that was a suggestion. However, that's a lot of money worth of equipment that we were planning to buy another piece of equipment with.
I'm not
And so,
saying,
I'm saying we can think about it, but I'm just making sure it's not a decision.
Right.
Jay's suggestion,
Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
they may not even be interested.
Right.
Okay,
And it's all the way it has.
so do you want to revise your motion?
Amend the motion.
So you made the motion, so I guess you'd amend your motion to include the additions as described by Mary. And if you do that and the second degrees, then I would like that.
I do.
Okay, I second that.
Okay. The motion was amended and the amendment was seconded to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was February 28th. Last meeting was February 14th, 2023, as amended by Mary Smith. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. First on the agenda is a request for abatement of lodging tax for January of 2023. And this was submitted by Amber Cho, manager of Georgetown Mountain Inn. I'll let you.
Sure.
intro.
So I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll give Amber an opportunity to state her reason why she's here, if I didn't clarify anything. In your action item, I did state just facts of how we have arrived to our lodging tax. And so Amber has submitted also a letter that we submitted to you guys of some of the confusion that she's had on her side. But also posed questions after talking to Amber on the phone, and I wanted Jerry to have a chance to respond to those questions. And then hopefully Jerry can also respond to some of the concerns that she submitted from her letter, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page as what is correct information. November 8th, 2022, the lodging tax was passed, and that was a 2% sales tax on lodging services in order to be a replacement tax from statute 30.11.107.5. It was communicated that that's what that was. It was approved to be that. November 30th, documents were sent to all vendors, which was a letter from the town explaining how tax would be collected. And there were registration forms and tax return forms. That was also part of that first letter. That was very clear, the percentage of tax would be 2% to the town, and the remaining 10.05% would go to the county or through the Department of Revenue. December 27th, motion was passed for ordinance number 7, which was the lodging tax. We called it the imposition and collection of a lodging tax. December 27th, also a motion was passed for the resolution to add the fees on the fee schedule. A registration fee of $25, 10% penalty for late filing, 1% interest for late fee. Also during this time, the Department of Revenue, actually they reached out to us in October and asked to make sure what kind of tax we were passing, and for us as a town would understand that if this is a lodging tax, then we would have to self-collect, but wanted us to respond to them and this was in October, what kind of tax this was. Then they sent another letter to us stating that they had contacted the county, and the county was confused of what our tax was, and they wanted to make sure what our tax was. So that was twice the Department of Revenue reached out, October and November. January 12th, the county contacted the town and did not believe that our tax was a lodging tax, but they believed that they still had the right to collect, and decided that a letter should be sent out to all the vendors to clarify that both municipality and county would be collecting until the Department of Revenue was clear on what direction the county was going to take. So therefore, a letter was sent out the next day communicating a 14.05% tax, 2% for Georgetown. The remaining would be collected by the Department of Revenue. January 13th, I personally went to all the vendors, hotel, motel, and bed and breakfast, to communicate 2 things to all the vendors to make sure they understood. One was that there was a long-term stay ordinance being worked on, and wanted to make sure that they had enough time to understand that there would be some license and upgrades if they intend to have long-term stay there. And second is that there was a confusion to make sure that because of the confusion between the county and the town, that there would be a double collection of this tax until this gets worked out. And hopefully this can be worked out as soon as possible. So that was on the 13th. Motion passed for ordinance number 3 on February 14th, which was to amend our lodging tax. And I have had multiple conversations with Amber to try to understand the situation that she's in. And I'll let her explain her situation, but some of the questions that have come out of the discussion that I've had with Amber and I'll let Jerry kind of go through these, because some of them are kind of redundant. Maybe once you answer one, it's easy to understand the second one. But is the original ordinance number 7, series 2020, have authority to make vendors pay the lodging tax in January 2023, even if it was amended later in February 2023?
And yeah, I've got all of those questions here, and I can just run through them if that's easier. And the answer is yes. I mean, the ordinance that the board adopted in December was effective for the collection of the tax as of January 1st, and that imposed the tax. The tax was effective as of January 1st and needed to be collected and remitted to the town. The second question was, well, gee, the ordinance got amended. Does that mean that the first ordinance wasn't effective? And of course not, because you often do that. You have codes in place that you amend from time to time. It doesn't mean the minute you amend them, everything that was in place before was somehow not effective for the period of time. The ordinance, you amend ordinances all the time to refine them, but that doesn't mean that the base tax changes, and it did not. There's a series of questions, 3, 4, and I think 5, all about the Department of Revenue. And let's be clear, the Department of Revenue doesn't collect the lodging tax. They can't collect the lodging tax. They're really clear about saying they don't collect the lodging tax. They don't have authority over the town's lodging tax. The code sections of the Department of Revenue sections that have been mentioned govern the Department of Revenue's relationship with local government's sales taxes that the Department of Revenue collects. That's a different animal, and the Department of Revenue does collect sales tax from many municipalities, Georgetown included. And the Department of Revenue has a relationship for sales tax, but not for lodging tax, and the Department of Revenue will tell you that. The last thing they will do and have any authority over is lodging tax. And so all of these 45-day waiting periods, that only applies to a sales tax. The Department of Revenue will collect for the town, not to a lodging tax. And they'll tell you the same thing. And for that reason, the Department of Revenue doesn't have any authority to not approve Georgetown's lodging tax. They don't have any role at all in saying yes, no to Georgetown's lodging tax. It's really this Board of Selectmen that has that authority. So the question, who has authority? It's the Board of Selectmen. Voters approve the tax. The Board of Selectmen adopted an ordinance that implements the tax. Then the Board of Selectmen refined that ordinance, but that tax was effective as of January 1, and there were no gaps. If the county continues to say, and we're in close contact with the county and working with them, I think we'll figure it out. The county's position regarding their tax doesn't affect the town's tax. And similar to the Department of Revenue, the county doesn't have authority to say to anybody that they cannot or should not collect the Georgetown tax. That's exclusively the town's role. Vendors don't have any discretion whether or not to pay or to collect the town's lodging tax at all. That's a tax that applies. Certainly, there's a statute that talks about this very thing, and that statute's mentioned in the materials. And we've talked about this at the board any number of times. When a municipality adopts a lodging tax, it displaces the county tax. And of course, the county needed to be, I guess, better informed, and they have been, and we've worked with them to make clear to them that yes, this is a lodging tax, and they understand that. And really, it's a matter of working with DOR and the county, and that effort is ongoing. But eventually, I think we'll find harmony there. But because you have the county and DOR around the county's lodging tax, that's not a dialogue that the town's in full control of. And those two parties have to get there, and I think eventually we will. So that's kind of my thumbnail sketch. The main point, I guess, is town's lodging tax is effective January the 1st and never became ineffective. You can keep amending it as long as you don't repeal it and not replace it with something. It stays there. Number one. Number two, DOR, Department of Revenue, doesn't have any role with respect to the town's lodging tax. So all of their rules around taxes are about sales taxes they collect for cities, not lodging taxes. That's my thumbnail sketch of those answers.
And so, right before Amber comes up or shares some of her side, is in the conversation that I've had with her, she states that she did not receive the second letter. And the second letter was to show both collections. And so as you'll hear some of her, some confusion, some questions that she has. And I just wanted to make sure you heard from Jerry's side too, that our lodging tax, I think one thing that Jerry didn't mention, but I'll clarify, is our lodging tax becomes effective immediately when it's posted. And so our charter declares that we don't have to wait a month, we don't have to wait 45 days, or we don't have to wait. As soon as it's posted, we have a month to post it once it goes through second reading. But I mean, the next day, if we post it, it goes into effect. So I think that that's something good to know. But I'd like to have Amber share some of her specifics of why she's in a situation that she's in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the explanation. I just wanted to address Jerry's comments there first before I go into my letter. Can I ask why the ordinance was amended?
Sure. The county needed, I guess, more assurance from the town that it is a lodging tax. The original ordinance itself matched up with many other municipal ordinances in the state imposing lodging taxes. We added additional language, primarily, frankly, around the enforcement tools, not the basic thrust of the ordinance, which is that it's a sales tax on lodging services, which is a lodging tax. And we told the county that we felt it was helpful to add some administrative and enforcement provisions, which the board did in the second ordinance. But that didn't change at all the fact that as of January 1, it was a lodging tax and it was enforced in the town.
Okay, I just like to note that you called it a sales tax, and also the reason why I brought the amendment is not because I'm not unfamiliar with the amendment being making the first one ineffective. It's because the first one, the ordinance number 7, series 2022, that was adopted and posted on December 27, does not define who is taxed nor who collects a tax, which you proceed to make that amendment and clarify that. But the original ordinance doesn't specify who the vendor is and who the vendor is supposed to collect the tax from.
And of course, for that, we rely on the messaging that the town has with its vendors, and the town has relationships with all of its vendors. And that's why Rick went over the various messaging that went out from the town to the vendors. I understand and appreciate that there's a difference of opinion over how that messaging was received and what you may have heard and what others heard. I think Rick will probably say that the other vendors have understood the imposition of the tax. The case law is really clear that a tax on a given service or product, and not a general tax, is still a sales tax. It's just a sales tax on a specific item or product, item or service, which is also characterized as an excise tax, but they still are taxes on a sale. So we spent a fair amount of time, I've talked with the county a fair amount about the terminology, and I think they're coming around to the fact that it's the intent of the tax that counts. It's a tax on the sale, in this case, of a service. I understand and recognize your concerns about the messaging to the vendors and what they heard and what they thought they heard and what was said and what they thought was said. And that's more of a dialogue between you and Rick, but I'll shut up because I know you want to make more of a presentation to the board, and I'd encourage you to do that.
Well, I appreciate your comments. The reason I brought up the sales tax, I'll get to that later. In terms of the communication between the town and us, is I'm not really addressing it because, like you said, the charter says that the ordinance has to be posted in order for it to be enforced. So whether you sent me a letter or whatnot, it has to be the ordinance that has to be posted, and that is the law. And that was not.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think the clerk will say that her regular practice is to post ordinances up either the next day or the day after. And by posting, we post in the location that is the traditional place for the posting of ordinances. And by our charter, the minute that posting takes place, which is usually within a day or two of approval of the ordinance is effective. So this posting took place prior to January the 1st, making the ordinance effective and the tax effective as of January the 1st.
Yes, that's true. But like I mentioned, the very first ordinance that was posted on December 27 fails to mention who is being taxed and who is supposed to collect the tax. The enforcement portion of that ordinance is completely missing. That's my one point. If I can just continue with some of these other items I just have two other things. I do agree the town operates under a charter and doesn't have anything to do with the Department of Revenue or the Colorado State. However, the county does. The county has to work with the state and the Department of Revenue. And I believe that the timeliness of Georgetown, the town's filings, directly impacts the county's ability to do their timely filings, which they're restrained and they have to follow the procedure of the state. So if the Georgetown doesn't follow the timeliness of the state, the county can't do the same. And hence that's why we end up with a double taxation. And I believe the towns, they had the charter, there's nothing done illegally, but the fact that it was not coordinated with the county creates a situation and definitely contributes to the violation of Colorado Revised Statute, section 30-11-107.5, parentheses 1, which states that no tax shall apply within a municipality levying a lodging tax. So in order for the county to be able to follow that statute, the town has to also give them time to file 45 days before they can make any changes with the Department of Revenue, because they're tied with the Department of Revenue.
Well, my comment would be, the Department of Revenue and the town of Georgetown was in conversation October 28th, and they knew what we were doing. However, no matter what we would have said to the county at that point in time, the county did not believe we had a lodging tax. And so we did everything that we can on our end to communicate we have a lodging tax. So it wasn't up to the town, it was up to the county, and the county at that time did not believe we had a lodging tax. They believed we both could collect, and that was their position. And that was the position of the Department of Revenue.
But you did mention earlier that the town was uncertain about our tax because the original ordinance lacked the language and clarity to show that it's a replacement lodging tax, not an occupational tax. So hence, again, we come back to the original ordinance and how incomplete it was. I believe the county shares that position, and hence that's why they're waiting for the new ordinance that you guys amended. However, at that point in February, it's too late because they need to do 45 days before January 1st or 45 days before July 1st. Those are the only 2 days that the Department of Revenue lets local jurisdictions change their tax rates.
And we can spend, more time respectfully disagreeing with each other, as we have been, about whether and to what extent the town's ordinance, in your view, was effective or not on January the 1st, and in my view, whether it was. But I guess I'd suggest two things. One, other vendors have been able to collect and remit, but I perceive that it's a matter of disagreement over what got communicated. We can keep plowing the ground on what we think the law is. I guess as I read your request, it's asking the board to do something, and it might be helpful if we got to that, because respectfully, you're probably not going to agree with me on the law. Respectfully, I'm not going to agree with you. So, but as I read your letter, there's more in it than that. And it's, well, laying all that aside, here's what I, on behalf of Georgetown Mountain Inn, am asking the board to do. And so maybe we should hear from that, because at some point the board is going to take that up or not. And they probably would like to hear from you.
Yes. Go ahead, Amber.
Yes. So as stated in my letter, those are the reason why we thought it was enough basis for us to request the abatement for just of January. Technically, we did not start collecting until February 18th, and we're going to pay that out of pocket. We started collecting based on the posting of ordinance number 3, series 2023, which was posted and signed on February 14th. And the conversation with town and county, based on the lack of clarity provided by these posted ordinances, their timeliness, and their conflict with the county and state level procedures, we request an abatement of any lodging taxes, penalties, and interest due for the month ended January 31st, 2023, respectfully.
Thank you. Yes, Deanne, go ahead.
Setting the whole thing up for the vote in November was done back in September, and that seems to be sufficient notice that this was the intent of the law. If the public, if our voters agreed to it, then it goes from November 8th, except that the official notice we got in our blue books for voting well before the election. Consequently, there has been sufficient notice.
Okay, thank you.
Can I address that? That is definitely one of my points, and I appreciate you addressing it. I'd like to bring up my point number 2. The charter, which referring to the Georgetown Territorial Charter, Article 5, Section 5.24, gives the Board of Selectmen power to pass ordinances that are not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States or State of Colorado. The ballot for this tax was solicited and passed as a replacement tax of the county lodging tax. Now that we're imposing both taxes, whether it's intentional or not, it results in a de facto misrepresented ballot. And I believe taxation without representation is unconstitutional.
Well, in terms of options for the board, again, we can respectfully disagree, and I disagree with that. But just in terms of action items for the board, you have a request to abate the town's lodging tax. You don't have any power over the county's tax. But you've got the request to abate the town's lodging tax for the month of January, along with the penalties and interest. As is often the case, you've got probably 3 different choices. One would be to approve that request, and the town's treasurer will implement your decision. Door number 2 would be to deny the request and take the position that the tax applied, and there's not a reasonable basis to abate it, and you could conceivably abate the tax in part, picking some date that makes sense in January or some fraction of January. Those are your choices. It has been put on the table that the messaging was unclear to vendors, or at least to this vendor. While I think Rick has indicated the other vendors have been able to figure it out, but life is imprecise. So that's why these questions come to you, and you get to make a decision around that. But it's a pretty straight up request. I've seen this in other cities. It's not inappropriate for a taxpayer, or in this case, a tax collector, a vendor who only collects taxes for the town to request on the basis of, in this case, confusion, an abatement of a certain amount of those taxes. And it's well within your discretion to allow this. So.
Okay,
It's up
yeah,
to
that's
you.
a question that crossed my mind,
Yeah.
was where's our legal basis and authority
No.
to go ahead? First, we establish it,
Yeah.
we put it to the voters approve it,
Yeah.
we pass the ordinances that allow it to go into effect.
Yeah.
And then do we actually then still have authority to grant relief from that tax?
You do. The power to impose a tax includes the power to abate a portion of the tax for good cause shown. Many cities have sales tax codes that put together a really complicated tax abatement hearing kind of process, because the town is state collected, not locally collected. You don't have such a procedure elsewhere for your sales tax. Other cities that I represent that self-collect do have those procedures. And it's not at all uncommon for the city treasurer, for example, to take a request like this and act on it. So there's absolutely no problem with your authority to abate this tax in whole or in part for the month of January.
Okay. So, you want to start us off, Rob? How do you feel on this? Well, you look like you were ready to
No, not at all.
state, okay. I thought that's what the breath was.
It just seems to me that the information was already out there. It wasn't something that was last minute. All the postings were made, in accordance to the law. It didn't seem as if we broke the law in any way, shape, or form. I'll leave it at that.
Okay,
I agree with that, and I think most of the problem seems to be coming from the county side of it, and we don't have any control over what the county does with the Department of Revenue. Kind of thinking that the complaints need to go to the county.
I agree.
Deanne, what are your feelings on this?
Well, as Rob said, I believe there was enough notice that it was publicly out there from the end of summer, basically. And even though I personally tended to vote against us doing this, it's established. Our voters said run with it. Consequently, we need to run with it. I'm also concerned that this is one person asking for a leeway. What about all the other vendors? If they come to us, do we have to, because we've established this as a precedent, do we have to allow them to also say, gee, they didn't think it was posted or understand it enough? I'm not trying to be mean to Amber. I just, to me, it's real black and white. It started January 1, period. And the county is the one that should be approached because they're the ones who are illegally taxing, not us.
Okay. So it sounds to me like the board is in favor of denying the appeal for the abatement.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, let me just throw one thing out here. I'm just curious as to whether you also think that the late fee and penalty should also be charged, or would that be reasonable to forego since we're in this, difficult startup time period? I'm just throwing it out there. How do you feel?
It is, it's part of the ordinance. Wouldn't that be irresponsible if I didn't stand up for that?
Well,
these matters are really kind of case by case.
mhm.
And Deanne asked a fair question, which is, if you do this here, do you have to do it across the board? The answer is no, because they are case by case and they're kind of based on their own individual facts. And while the other vendors have been able to comply, each vendor has their own set of facts, and the fact you would abate or not here does not mean that if there's another request, you'd have to look at it on its facts. So here it's well within your authority to, as I said, abate in whole or in part. And when I said in part, that would extend to, picking a date in the middle of January, but I'm not hearing that, but to abating the penalties and interest if you chose to. And you have full authority to do that.
Could I say this then? Would it be there? I feel like I'm shooting myself in the foot, but would it be okay to work with her and see if we can maybe come to maybe something south of what the full tax would be, or would we, if we're not setting a precedent?
No, you're not, and you could certainly sort of continue you could direct the administrator and the treasurer to have further dialogue with Amber to see if there was a number that they would agree with. In the end, it's one you'll have to come up with. It's one you'll have to approve.
Would anybody else think about tabling it and discussing it with him?
In the email train that we had, communication between Amber and town staff, she did write a check, and then she came back and asked us not to cash it, and then started this proceeding or this question. So I think we need to stand on, she understood,
Got it.
or the mom in understood, they received the documentation.
Can I,
And they owe the tax, and there's a penalty,
Got it.
okay?
Got it.
That communication was clear.
Yeah. That is true.
can I?
Yes, Deanne?
I think
And
we're, say what?
Amber was trying to say something, but let me hear from Deanne first, and then we'll go to Amber.
Okay, I personally abhor late fees. I think they're just ways to beat up the little guy. And I would like to cut her some slack on that. It's fine with me if we don't charge the late fees, despite the fact that it's in the ordinance now. It just, we're all trying to sort this out. And if the county and the Department of Revenue had their act together, we wouldn't even be sitting here tonight. It would all have gone the way it's supposed to. I feel like we're trying to sort out stuff that those guys, meaning the county and Department of Revenue, are the ones who really should have dealt with it. So I'm fine with cutting her slack on late fees and all of that.
Okay. Go ahead, Amber.
I just wanted to say the reason I showed up with a check and a tax return is on February 15th, we received a call saying that it was the last day to file the return and the last day to pay. And that just caught us off guard. So we didn't want to do anything wrong. So we came to the town hall and tried to pay it. At that time, I got into a little dispute, but I had planned to pay it, but the dispute made me go and do some digging and research what is actually going on, because I felt really blindsided, because like Rick said, I never received that second letter. And hence why this petition developed, because I was blindsided and I wanted to find out more. And this is the result of my research and spending time on it. I didn't try to harm anybody, or I'm not trying to take what is not owed to me. I just wanted to be seen that reasonably for us, we didn't know that this was double taxation. Multiple times it was mentioned that we had ahead of time that it was going to be in effect in July, October, November. But at that time, we thought the county tax would just disappear. So it was just a lot of surprises for us.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Rick.
I guess I would like to say, I do not feel at any point that the town has done something wrong or we failed to do something. In fact, I feel like we went to the next step in order to make sure that all of our vendors understood what was at stake and how it was tough times for all of us. However, I'm not here to question Amber if she did or did not receive the letter, the second letter. And so if anything, I am sympathetic towards her. I can understand the situation that she's in as a vendor, trying to collect fees, also being tossed about between the county and the town. And so if I'm in her situation, I am sympathetic. And at least for the first 13 days, I have lots of compassion, because at that point, she thought she was only collecting one lodging tax. And so if anything, I would be sympathetic towards those 13 days, because at that point, I had gone to every vendor to make sure after that point that this was, in fact, clearly understood that there are two taxes. So if anything, I would have compassion on the first 13 days. And that's my recommendation.
Okay. Amber, I have a question for you. This is Lynette. Did you at any time contact the county and ask them about why they were or were not backing off of their tax collection?
I did recently, and they have not returned my call. At the previous time, I didn't. I misunderstood my conversation with Rick, and I thought the town was backing off. So I didn't bother to collect or contact the county, because I thought the county is tax was in effect and everyone was okay with that. So I just continued to do as it was in 2022. And that was my position. So when I found out the county is double taxing, I did try to reach out to them. I also reached out to the Department of Revenue, local tax guy, Milo, something at Department of Revenue. And I've been in talks with them. But I just, I'm coming to you because it's a new tax. They've been collecting it for years. We want to help out the town. We supported this tax. We support the idea. We support where the fund is going. It was just, we were caught blindsided. And I just, the ordinances, the county, I mean, I'm just a vendor. I'm not supposed to be an expert in law. I only looked all this stuff up in the last couple of days. So, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Do we prorate the penalty so that, but based on our decision today, it's just from the time that it was due on the 20th to today?
Sure, you can, it's just math. I say that before Mary has.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's,
The amount can only been
Yeah.
by 8 days.
yeah, you can
I can
do that. If, you know, based upon the discussion and what I've heard, my job is always to kind of help you structure motions and give you choices. Clearly, you still have the option to grant the request. That's a simple motion. It's also a simple motion to deny the request. It's a little more complex for a motion to grant the request in part. And the parts can be grant the request to abate through the 13th of January and prorate the penalties and interest accordingly. That would be a motion that would sort of match up with what you heard Rick having sympathy for the vendor on. And, you know, at some point, somebody should make a motion and we can get a second, we can kind of craft it a little bit more. But if you're in the middle here, as opposed to a grant or deny, then we'll have to do a little, you know, work on it. But if you are in the middle, it would be to abate in part as follows, and then you can either pick the 13th and prorate the penalties and interest, or you can say abate just the penalties and interest and not prorate. That's kind of that's a choice, but at some point somebody's gonna have to make a motion. We'll see if there are amendments to it just to get it going.
I'll start us off, if I may.
Certainly.
I move that we, the Board of Selectmen, deny the request to abate the January 2023 Georgetown lodging tax for Georgetown Mountain Inn and prorate the penalty to February 28th, 2023.
I can second that.
Okay,
I want clarification really solidly. We're abating the amount of tax shios, and are we alleviating penalties and fees and all of that? Or please restate that.
My motion was to deny her request and to prorate the penalty to today. So it would be 8 days of penalty.
I object to that. That I don't like that at all.
Well, first we have to see if there's a second to the motion and whether it gets
And-
passed.
and then what?
Unseconded.
The motion was seconded by John. So
Discussion.
is there more discussion?
I
Yes.
object. I can't agree to prorating the penalty. The penalty needs to be completely forgiven. That's it. Penalties and interest need to be forgiven. It'd be fine to prorate the basic tax just because there could have been some confusion. But I don't think there was any confusion, so I'm not even real sure about that. But definitely not prorate penalty. There should be no penalty.
All right.
Other discussion?
Any other discussion?
I think it's important that we just get the tax, and as long as we're getting the tax, we can forgive the rest. No
So-
penalties.
So you're amending a motion?
No, you have to amend the motion.
Well, you can-
Well, is it, does he make a motion to amend to forgive all of the penalties and interest, if you wish? I mean, folks, you gotta like. you
Yeah,
have
I'll make
comments
the
and stuff.
motion to, yeah, I'll make that motion too.
So John's motion is to amend Mary's to say, forgive or abate all of the penalties and interest on this account. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Wait, you're denying the abate, you're denying the abatement, but not,
Also getting rid of the penalty,
but not doing the penalty, but collecting the tax from.
collecting the tax.
But not the penalty.
John's motion is basically expanding the abatement of penalty that was in your main motion.
Yeah.
So that's the motion to amend Mary's motion, which got seconded by Deanne.
By Deanne. Mhm.
So you
Okay.
ought to vote on that.
Let's vote on that motion, the most recent motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Motion as amended now
Yes,
is to deny the request as to the taxes,
correct,
but to abate all the penalties and interest.
correct.
That'd
Yes,
be from January 1st all the way to today. That's the motion in front of you that now you should vote.
Okay. So,
all here.
and, okay.
Yeah.
So let's vote on that amended motion then.
So wait a minute, we just voted yes on the first.
Yeah, all you were doing is amending.
Oh, okay.
Amending the motion.
John amended it. Come on, this is
Yeah.
not,
I know, we don't get them.
you gotta,
So,
the motion in front of you is to deny the request to abate the
Correct.
taxes,
got it.
but to grant an abatement of all the penalties and interest on this account.
Okay,
That's the motion in front of you.
Okay.
And seconded.
got it.
You're ready to vote. Call for vote.
All in favor, say aye.
All opposed?
All opposed.
Okay.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you for bringing this to us, Amber.
Sure, no problem.
Okay,
That was nice.
next is the Strauss Park Refresh Project. We're renewing contract professional service agreements, and also we've got an update on the Strauss Park project from Bob Hamilton.
So I'll just do the first one. You have it in your action item. We're just updating the professional services agreement for both Bob and Ryder. The only change was Ryder's maximum to decrease from 10,000 to 5,000. And the same per hour fee for the same $35 per hour. So that was the only change, is reducing the amount that we had allotted to that.
I guess I wondered about the scope of their contract as well, because both of them went back to just the original, which most of those have, they're in completion phase on phase 2.
Yeah.
And Bob Hamilton still had reference to the restroom phase, which was phase 1, which is totally completed. So
Yeah, so just I will amend this, but is to focus exclusively on finishing this phase 2 project of the siding, the gutters. And then if there's the decision from the parks and about deciding on the shed or whatever, the storage building, if it was going to be converted into consign, or whatever it's called, not consignment, concessions, concession space, and then focusing on the landscaping to finish that phase of landscaping, because that has not been started yet. So I will change the scope, and I'll also amend and take out the interim administrator, since that was Steve Robbie that actually did this, and make it the town administrator.
okay.
And I'll try and, since you have a package, I'll try and be brief. During February, not a whole lot has happened, particularly physically out there. We tried, I think on one warm sunny day, we did get some the battens put on the back of the green side. And then it got cold and snowy again, so Mother Nature is not very cooperative this time of year. However, I did start the dialogue with Parks and Rec. I gave them an update on the whole thing back at the beginning of February sometime. The homework from them was, I gave them a list, which you have in your packet, and I think we discussed last time, of future opportunities, or, and Rick mentioned the possibility of adding concession where the storage area is. So they took that under advisement, and I'm expecting at their next meeting, which I think is this Thursday, to plan to meet with them again, get any feedback in direction on where we should go with wrapping up phase 2 and some of the opportunities we have there, and start looking at phase 3. I gave them, my thoughts on things that I have heard from various people around town that we may want to deviate from the DHM plan. So we're starting the dialogue on phase 3, which is the hardscape of the parking lot. So hopefully within the next month, we'll get better clarity on that. I'm expecting once we get the scope of phase 3 defined, probably the best way to handle it would be to go out to a landscaping contractor or someone that does that kind of stuff. It doesn't look like it would be a multi-phase project like we did for phase 2 with the shelter. Probably one contractor or the contractor to do it all, because it's all, pretty much the same kind of thing. And it's not the kind of thing we really have local talent to get into. If there is a decision to move forward with doing something with the storage area and converting it or finishing it out into, a kitchen, a field kitchen or something like that, that's something we could probably handle similar to the way we did phase 2. We get local support and move that forward, because that all of the plumbing infrastructure is there, so it should be pretty easy to do. And hopefully the weather will get better. I've got Ryder, I talked to him. He's eager to get started finishing up, getting to final trim and, getting all the shelter itself wrapped up.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Any questions for Bob? Okay. So I think we just need a motion to approve both of those professional service contracts.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the professional service contracts for both Bob Hamilton and Richard Ryder Leyba. And with the edits that we've discussed here. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Can I just remind everybody that Georgetown Days is Memorial Day weekend. It'd be nice if we had phase 2 done.
Yes,
Weather should get some good weather by this.
we should. Yeah. Don't schedule your work for Tuesdays or Wednesdays. The stats are not with you. So, agenda item number 3 is ordinance number 5, series 2022. And this is first reading. And this is an ordinance amending Georgetown's municipal code concerning maximum lot size and building sizes for the historic residential zone district and concerning code amendments relating thereto. Isn't this first reading continued?
Yes,
Yeah.
we've seen it on first reading and it's in front of you again.
Okay.
And there's others are smarter about this ordinance than I am, but there is the one change on the FAR to 0.4, I think, on the second page. That's kind of the significant change, I think, since you saw it in class. But other than that, I think that's Rick for his back report.
So in the staff report, I kind of reiterate what were the changes. And where we are today is the part that was in question that was actually tabled in order to have more discussion between the planning commission and the design review commission and the public. And we've had, I think, 3 meetings, 2 big ones and 1 small one. And that was to discuss, how can we move? And where we started with was a 0.3. And in the second meetings, it moved to a 0.35 FAR. And then our last meeting, it seemed that both boards had come to a recommendation of a 0.4.
And this is planning commission and
DRC. And yeah, that was correct.
design review.
Yeah, and we had extensive conversation. We did have opposition that was communicated in the discussion from the public, asking to consider other tools such as a bulk plane requirements. In fact, Wheat Ridge and some of the other places had it, and I did some research to look at that too. But that was not recommended from the both boards. They listened to what the public had communicated, and was recommended to move forward with a 0.4 FAR. We did receive public comment of, I think it was 2 letters or maybe 3 letters of opposition. And so those were, I think 2 of the letters were submitted to us, but then a 3rd came into office today to communicate opposition as well. So.
Okay.
That third party, was that by letter or just verbal?
Verbal.
Okay. So first reading is not the public hearing that goes to public hearing happens at second reading. So,
Up to you if you want to take comments.
We could.
Another board
we certainly could.
does on first reading. Dallas, maybe people in the audience.
I believe
We're planning on that.
we have some visitors for that. Yes.
Yes.
So
But there will be another.
Time. This
this is first reading. It was continued. The first reading got continued.
They never approved on first reading. They continued it to tonight. So we're still in first reading world. But nothing wrong with taking
Certainly.
comment, understanding there will be another shot
Right.
at second reading.
Right. Okay. Did anybody want to offer public comment? Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Tell us who you are and
I'm Matthew Brown and my wife, Margaret, and I live at 902 Main Street.
okay,
And I have to say we are new to this issue and actually new to this particular process. So hopefully we can or I can make maybe ask some questions that might be helpful. And maybe I think the perspective, I guess, that I come at this from is we bought our house in 2012. We lived here full time for the last couple of years. And over the we downsized, and then we kind of thought, well, maybe we downsized too much. And especially as one of our daughters is pregnant and lives abroad and thinking about, like this is gonna move back, and like how are we gonna fit everybody in the house? And so this is like the personal side of this. So then we, look at, can we expand our house somewhat? Keeping it within, I mean, Georgetown, we live in Georgetown for a lot of reasons, but one is the historic nature of the place, and we, that we value that tremendously. But I think the concern that we would have is that, from a personal level, is that it looks like this would make it impossible for us to expand the house to a level that, and we're never going to be able to expand. It's never going to be a McMansion kind of thing, but it looks like it would prevent us from expanding in some relatively limited way. But I don't know for sure because we haven't really done that first, done the full measurements and so on. But my concern, that's like, how we come at it personally. I think maybe the bigger picture is one of the other things that we've been considering is, should we move within Georgetown? We've looked at another house that was large. I haven't been going to go that direction. But in the process of doing that, we had a couple of people come and look at our house, and we kind of got into the discussion of, well, who might be interested. And I think it's clear, that having a house or having the ability to have a house that's even expanded somewhat to enable a family to live there is a good thing. I think, I think, and so it's just, as I look around and I see, in the area where we live, I just remember we've got neighbors who wanted to have their grandkids come out, and the grandkids, we don't want to come up here because there aren't any kids around here. And I think just being able to have families in this area, I think is a good thing, and B, it's something I think that is going to make it more difficult to have families there, because there's going to be kind of an artificial limitation on the house size. And so I'm concerned about that from kind of the big picture. And I'm curious, we are new to this topic, and I'm sure that people have looked at I'm sure that people have looked at kind of what the impact is and how many different homes and properties it's going to affect, but I'd be curious about that more broadly. So I think those are the kind of the comments, I guess, hardly it's questions, but observations and I guess concerns that it may provide, create kind of an artificial limitation. I don't, we're still learning, who does what, what does DRC do? My kind of understanding was that a lot of this kind of thing would be handled through the DRC. So I'm trying to understand, why we need this if DRC is also in the role of kind of overseeing one. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
May I, for
you certainly may.
a minute or two, and I hope you will permit me a minute or two. First of all, I speak up, Matthew. The DRC, Betsy Blakeslee, Rob Hamilton, John Platt, the Planning Commission, Brian Kuczynski, and Wilkins. And yes, these two commissions are tasked in this town, in the historic district, that their statement of purpose says that one of their purposes here is to maintain the historic character of the town of Georgetown. One of the letters that the town has received in regard to this current effort to actually do that in a cooperative fashion. And that means having area and bulk regulations that help support design review guidelines. The DRC operates off of design review guidelines, which are online, if you would care to research those. And the Planning Commission operates off of area and bulk regulations. And when we have area and bulk regulations and design regulations that don't support one another, we get some really sort of interesting tangles. So that's how this started, with Wayne saying, wait a minute, we have to, for Planning Commission. All of these are volunteer positions, as you can well imagine. However, the Design Review Commission is now 52 years old. And so we have spent 50 years on the subject of preserving the historic character of Georgetown, and actually we're pretty proud of our track record, if you want to know the truth. And in this room, it was very debated, if logos 50 years ago, whether any such ordinance should be passed. We had this little town passed the first one west of the Mississippi, between the Mississippi and California, those 50 years ago. It had many of the same complaints that we will hear from various people in this room, that it was going to be too restrictive, that it was going to be too confining to people who wanted large places. And in that regard, we sort of said, but yes, that's essentially in our historic zone. There are other places in our town for larger structures if people want larger structures. So that's part of our history. And as far as the idea that you cannot describe what a historic character is of a place, of course you can describe what a historic character is of a place. You can describe the character of any place, but when we were made into a national landmark district in 1966, they started the first descriptions of exactly what it was that made this place have the character that it does, and related to this, the styles and the sizes of the architecture and the remaining buildings that we had, in addition, of course, to our history of mining. So one of the things that we have been able to preserve through the Design Review Commission and through the Planning Commission is that kind of sense of the various, of the size of our town, and size does matter. And if you don't feel that it matters, try visiting the historic district of Aspen, Breckenridge, Telluride, or any of those places, and watch what has happened to historic houses. We have, over the years, lost 2 or 3 historic houses to you know, that were. We also have done a lot of homework over the years. We have done studies. First of all, there was no single family zoning. And so we counted all the houses that were single family in this area, and the town passed single family zoning. That was hotly debated because it took away from people's rights and limits and things. And then we did the historic designations were reviewed in 1978 and 1996, were completely redone in 2014. And this is, we were told this is done by people who also are outside of the town, as far as looking at what are the basic Secretary of Interior standards for historic houses. So yes, the historic preservation of this town has a very long history that we're proud of. And we are actually recognized as having done the best job in the state of Colorado, because other towns have lost so much. One of the things I'd like to give to the board members, in the discussions of the most recent FARs, what we're really after is making the size of the building fit the size of the lot. And so that we end up with smaller buildings on smaller lots, larger buildings on larger lots. What's on this map, we don't have them. The buildings in blue, and the curious part of this was that the planner that we had has suggested that we use 2,000 square foot living space as one of the denominators, and that actually is a 0.4 FAR for a standard lot of 5,000 square feet. And if this sounds technical, it is technical, because this is what the commissions have to do. They have to understand the technical aspects of it. All of the blue squares on this are houses that have 2,000 square feet of living area or less. The living area does not include your garage. Or your front porch, or the front porch. Living area is your bedroom, your bedrooms on and your living rooms, your dining rooms, your kitchens, and your attics where they could become potential bedrooms in a heartbeat, or your basement. If it is above ground, then it could become potential bedrooms in a heartbeat. So you can see that we have a lot of blue structures. The circles actually, and I wasn't totally precise on one or two at the far end. The circles are the houses that are deemed contributing to the National Historic Landmark District. And can a house lose that designation? Yes, unfortunately, yes, it can. Now, doing additions to houses does not necessarily lose that designation. We have lost 2 or 3 of their made houses through oversized additions. So, but doing an addition per se does not change that designation. We've gotten more skillful as a commission in dealing with additions so that they don't take away from the historic nature of the houses. You will notice we have a preponderance of we have far more blue houses than we have red houses on the map. We have far more smaller houses than larger houses. One of the greatest difficulties, we're a certified local government for preservation purposes on a state level and dealing with the federal agencies who might want to spend money or license. And so the DRC has that level, and so we end up talking to other groups in other towns who are similar commissions to our commissions. And there are two issues. The biggest one is infill. And that while it might not look like there's much space for infill in this town, actually, the tricky part of FAR is that many of our houses sit on multiple lots. And so their FAR may look low, but if they sold off their extra lots, their FAR would be higher. We have more potential for inflow. I think that I counted pretty accurately. We have 27 different spots where some of them you would look and say, oh, they would never sell that piece of their yard. Never say never. We've seen it happen in a number of places that people do that. So infill is one of the big questions, and preserving our historic structures in a reasonable way. And yes, I lived here for 4 years than I care to count. Which means I'm older than I care to be. We won't go there. Yeah. We want this to be a place, not our children here. And grandchildren can come and visit here. And no, I don't have space in my house for them, but I find space so that we can do this as a family. So yes, the commissions have been discussing this since, I don't know since when. At this point, we've had a number of meetings together, and we have spoken with developers and architects and real estate people. And of course, you know, I understand from their kind of view, the bigger you can build, the bigger you can sell. And that's in part what you know drives the market. And what drives the market is the fact that people want to come, want to be here and have plenty of space for kids. I think that we understand that. We also understand that our charge is to preserve the historic nature and character of this community. And that puts smaller houses on smaller lots and bigger houses on bigger lots in general. And yes, there are exceptions over the years, but that's, I would say, I would like to encourage the board to continue to support this. The DRC guidelines can do some of it by themselves, but when they are in conflict with area and bulk regulations, that is not helpful to the purposes of either of your commissions. And if any of the other commission members would like to speak, go for it.
Yes, Betsy.
Great.
Yeah.
Betsy.
Hello.
So just a couple of comments. I live one house away from the elementary school. How many children are in the elementary school? 100 children that we have here. And most of them are in the historic district when they are going to school, of course. What I'm not going off on a tangent, but I do want to say that I live in deathly fear every day that the speed with which cars and motorcycles up to 60 to 65 miles an hour go up Grove Street to Brunella Pass is going to kill one of those 100 children one of these days. And we have got to deal with that issue. So, quite frankly, to talk about Georgetown not having many children, I think that's one of the worries. I have 5 grandchildren ranging in ages from 21 to 8. And last weekend, 2 of those grandchildren brought 2 of their friends from Denver up to Georgetown. This is rather a timely comment. I'm glad I could share it. And we got a note from the mother of one of the kids who's from Denver. Who said, Mom, we were in Georgetown. We went skiing, we were sledding, you know, on 3rd Street where the kids all sled. We weren't even on the screens 1 minute when we were in Georgetown. And you know what? You can go down to Diesel and Anderson. And Mrs. Blakesley said that all we needed to do is say that we can have candy bars, and our grandmother said we could put it on her charge. And who's your grandmother? Betsy Blakesley. Oh, yes, she puts a lot of things on our charge. So of course, children, you can do that. That I think is what we're trying to save. That is what does not exist in Breckenridge or Dillon or Silver Plume or Vale or Aspen anymore. We're it. So I put my 5 grandchildren, ranging in ages from 21 to 9, in the attic. Well, obviously they're together, it's just great. There are ways to do this without massively expanding your house. And the kids love doing that. So it doesn't have to be like Aspen or Vale, where the children all have their individual bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. You can expand and be creative, and you know what? The kids love all being on top of each other. So I think your fears, Matthew, are not going to be realized. When you have all those grandchildren, the absolute joy of being able to be in this town is such a throwback to another century. I think we really want to do that. So that's my point.
Thank you. Anybody else from VRC or Planning Commission that wants to make a comment?
Yeah, I'll make it. Sorry, somebody say something?
No, I have a question, I mean, I'm sorry.
I know, I'm just trying to keep this somewhat contiguous. And I just thought we'd hear from the commissions and then we'll come back to public. Cool, yeah.
Twenty assistant chairman of planning commission. At our last meeting, it was perfect. We had everybody's comments. Everybody got to say how they felt. The thing that for me, it always goes back to is oh, well, people want this and people want that. What does historic Georgetown want? What do we need to do to protect it? Cindy always makes that same point. It's like when you take an historic house, when you modify it, is it still truly historic? I think people should realize that when they buy a historic house, technically to me, I kind of stay away from historic houses because you're very limited on what you can do because it's supposed to stay that way. When my parents used to come here back in the 90s, that's what they came here for. That's what they loved. And now when they come, they're still like, oh, the town's changing, but you still have that. How you go about overcrowding that. And that's where the FAR came into play. Upping that, I think it helps. But realistically, how many people are going to buy a historic house in historic Georgetown? This isn't the rest of Georgetown, this is historic Georgetown. How many people are coming here to buy that house? Then they go, oh, well, we really don't care. We like this historic, but we want to modify our house and we want to make it bigger. If you've been here for a long time, this is where you want to be. I'm sure you've added on to it. If you go back to the old days, they were added on to tons. But that's what we're looking at is historic on how those houses are. I think when it really comes down to it, it's each person's idea on what's historic and what they want to keep and their contribution to that. But at the end of the day, it's what it really means to an actual historic house and what surrounds that. And that FAR will help fit the size and the structure surrounding those historic houses, because otherwise it will, the most efficient build is a 2,000 square foot house. That size, we're not arguing that. It's better for a person looking to buy a house, they can do more with it. But I don't necessarily believe that fits historic Georgetown when you start pushing that point on every single house. I think you start losing that. And we're at a time frame, everybody can afford bigger and better houses, so to speak. So, if If you're looking on one point, yeah, you know, that'd probably get more people in your bigger houses. But then you lose that historic Georgetown. That's the thing that for me, it always goes back to. Man, like I combine that. I'm a builder. I love to build stuff. You know, it's you make more money off of a bigger house. But it's those small houses that has that charm to it, that characteristics. And yeah, it's tough. Like Betsy said, you know, you pile everybody into the house. You know, that was kind of what I grew up with. You know, but that is Georgetown. So it's hard to look past that. That's what drew me here, and that's what I go back to. I think it does become complicated. People don't like to be told what they can or can't do, and you want that freedom. And sure, we already have a lot of rules with DRC. But for me, this is what helps. It helps make it easier. You know, if I'm interested in buying a lot of historic Georgetown, that FAR tells me, okay, I can do this size of house. With that FAR, it also helps with DRC with guidelines on that size of structure that you can build that more than likely will help you get through DRC without spending a lot of money to not know what you do, just to go, okay, well, wait a minute, I gotta change this, and then you're changing the whole style of it. But that's kind of all I have to say.
Okay. All right, thanks. Anybody else from Planning Commission or DRC? Okay, let's go on to Amanda. I see your hand is up.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Amanda Cooper, 409 3rd Street. And I am speaking out tonight in opposition of this ordinance 5. A couple of points I wanted to get to that were brought up in previous. The current count for Georgetown Community School is 82. That's the number of students that we were funded on this year. That count day went in on October 1. That does not include our preschool count. That would put us just over 100. I would love to have 100 kids because that would be huge. That would be amazing. Our average class size at Georgetown is 14. Our largest class is 17 and our smallest is 11. Again, that doesn't include preschool. That's K through 6. Obviously, I'm very passionate about our school as I serve as the president of the Georgetown Community School Board. And my biggest concern is that the impact that this restrictive ordinance would have on attracting young families into our community. We need 100 kids to be continually viable. We make it work on what we have in front of us, but the longevity isn't there if we continue to kind of teeter in these below 100 numbers. We're coming into a charter renewal year for that school, and that's something that everyone in Georgetown should really care about. That's a huge thing that's on the horizon for us. And knowing that we have families that are here that want to move here because they enjoy what Georgetown has to offer on multiple fronts is a good thing for us. Now, certainly, we have a really robust code within the DRC that I feel is pretty comprehensive in what it allows homeowners to do. I would also be impacted in the home that my husband and I just bought for expansion. And yes, I'm one of those families that my boys share a room now, but when they're 13 and 17, the likelihood that they're going to want to continue to share a room, I'm not sure what that's going to look like for us. Telling families what they can and cannot do with their property is a really hard line. And we obviously have an obligation to preserve our town's integrity. And that's what makes Georgetown so special. But if we cut off the ability for families to increase their lot sizes, I apologize, guys. I'm at home in a frozen house with no power right now. So you're hearing my kids in the background. Cutting off the ability for families to expand into homes that meet their growing needs is really important. And I think we have ways of doing that within our current existing town code. Again, I have utmost respect for everybody who's speaking tonight, but I would really encourage everyone to think about the long-term ramifications, not just for our school, but for our economic climate, our workforce housing, and bringing in people in the community that can bring some disposable income and help, revive 6th Street and support our businesses year round. So I'm on the record as someone who really knows what you guys are after, but I just think it's a little bit too far. And I thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, you were next.
I'm Beth Montgomery, and my question is, why do we need this? Because we already have these other organizations. I mean, Cindy, I think you spoke eloquently to the fact that the town has been able to, for the past 50 years, keep the historic nature of the town and get the historic landmark district designation, and the DRC exists for this purpose, and we've got a lot of people. I mean, I care deeply about the historic nature of the town too, and I don't want to wreck that, but why is this a good idea to bring this into yet another organization?
What do you mean another organization?
Well, I mean, when we're talking about the town, what's the relationship between the DRC? I thought if I wanted to go do something with my house, then the DRC's regulations already would be identifying what I could and could not do with that.
That's not the way our builder starts. The builder starts with area and bulk regulations from a zoning code. And in this area, they're going to tell you that you can have a 25-foot house up to the center of the gable and how you measure the bottom, so you can have that size of house, and you can have a 40% lot coverage, okay? And that's the square footage you can put on your lot. All right, so I have a lot. If it's a standard lot, it's 5,000 square feet, right? And I can cover it to 40%. I can cover it with 2,000 square foot of house. I can go to 25 feet, so I can put 2 stories of 2,000 square feet if I wish. So I can come into the DRC saying, I can meet the planning commission's bulk regulations with my 4,000 square foot house. My 4,000 square foot house, which is, you know, all the blue houses on that map are under 2,000 square feet of living space. I know it's more when you put on the garages and the porches and stuff, but and a 4,000 square foot house on a 5,000 square foot lot is huge. So I have a 4,000 square, we have a lot of odd lots. And this is part of what's happening to us. You have the guy who has 3,750 square feet, but let's say it's 4,000. And he comes in and he says, okay, I can have 1,600 square foot on this floor. And I can have 1,600 foot on this floor. So all of a sudden you have on this tiny little lot, something that meets planning, the zoning code. But they come in front of the DRC, who's looking at it and saying, but you know, you have a house next door to you that has 1,400 square foot on this side, and a house over here that has 30, if you had maybe 2,000 or 2,200 square feet. And you can put this huge thing, you're gonna see, you know, you can put this large thing, plunk dab in the middle. And the DRC says, no, you can't, because it's out of mass and scale. And your person has read your area and bulk regulations. They've read them, they think they're within them. And then they come to a design committee, and yes, they should have stopped and read the guidelines before they designed. But that's not the way it happens lots of time. They start with the area and bulk regulations. It's a logical place to start. And then they come with the design and the DRC. Yeah, we have a rule that we don't enforce that heavily because of area and bulk. And that is that you need to be within 5 foot height of your surrounding historic structures. And yes, I suspect that the DRC can get really strict on that one. And that's going to cause just all kinds of that's a really tough one. If you look at the size of our historic houses, even going up now Main Street and in between Martinez and you live on Main Street, if those are the heights that are going to govern all heights, that could get very, very, very tough. We're trying to make it so that when the person looks at the zoning regulation, they are understanding that the bulk, and I look pretty thoroughly at the bulk plans to that the bulk and the max is going to be restricted in at some level.
And so you have to, that's what authority of restriction does. It says that, yes, in this 5,000 square foot lot, you can still do your 40% covering. And you can still have 2,000 square feet of living space, and you put it on 2 floors, you can put it on 1 floor. It doesn't count your garages or your sheds or your you know, or your porches. But it lets you have some idea of what the size is going to be before you walk in the door to the design review commission, who is then going to, you know, without that, the design review commission is looking at the size of this thing and saying, no, you have to start from the ground. You need to create a less bulky house because you're in a whole neighborhood of smaller historic. Can I just clarify, doesn't somebody who's gonna build in Georgetown know that they're gonna have to go through the design review committee to make sure that it's applies anyway? But they also know what they. This is they were some torch. Yeah. I know. Guidelines, they are the law.
I live far, by the way, Cindy, you could still have the same bulb. All you have to do is have a cathedral ceiling, and you still have that same bulk of 2,000 square feet. You still have it, you just have less room upstairs for your bedrooms or whatever it may be. So that really does not, I don't see any reason why that would solve that. Also, anytime, if I may speak a little bit.
Go ahead and identify yourselves for the record. Thanks. I know who you are, but yeah.
Most people do. I've been in real estate for 30 years here. Now, anytime you change zoning, you are not impacting a few people. You are impacting everyone in that zone. And my calculation is different than Cindy's. I've gone through, I've been through most of the homes in Georgetown. I know county records, they're not that accurate. There's a lot of these square footages are very light in many respects. But on the other one, you have setback controls. You have bulk, area you can build on, including porches, by the way. I don't know. That's included in that, which I wish you wouldn't have, because I love porches. And then you have DRC, you have all those controls, you have height controls, then you have DRC controls. Now you want to limit what a family can have living space wise. Now I will disagree with the character of Georgetown, because I can take my house, and I know there's a lot of homes here in Georgetown. The character of my home was very simply, it was a cabin. It grew family, generation by family, and it grew. That is 90% of these historic homes grow with the family. And they grow with a generation of people remodeling. We want to allow people to remodel. If you don't, you're going to have a disaster. And as far as character is concerned, we also, as far as Amanda Cooper, we want families. I love families. I don't want second home buyers. I don't want all that kind of stuff to come into Georgetown. This is what we want. And I'm assuming everybody wants that. And we want people vested. These people have all this information here. Everyone right now has a vested interest in Georgetown, in their homes. They bought under a certain situation, they bought under certain guidelines, and now what you're doing is put another guideline says, wait a minute, you can only have so much living space. And I would strongly disagree with adding on a car.
Okay.
And I would say that, Bob's home started as, it doesn't qualify as a historic house. We can really destroy.
Okay.
No, it doesn't. I mean, our historic, I don't know what a historic house.
Okay. All right. Okay. Craig.
Craig Abraham, 15 Main Street. You've heard from me on this topic. This is the last you'll hear from me on this topic, I promise. So I think I win the longevity contest. 56 years is how long I've lived here my entire life. Met several generations. The character of Georgetown is my coach to stay here. And I fight not to the nail, but I work every day to help protect that in some way, shape, or form. I've been on DRC. I've been on the Board of Selectmen. I've served when that is. I've served on the Georgetown Community School Board of Directors. I work hard to maintain the things that keep Georgetown special. What you're hearing tonight is a pretty good representation of where we stand collectively or separately on the issue. It's not resolved. And that's okay. That's why you guys get the big bucks. You have to make the final decision. But I do want to clarify just a couple of points. The conversation seems to have painted the DRC guidelines in this impotent light. Like they really don't carry much weight. They carry the force of law. They are adopted, right? They're part of the zoning regulations. Just because they aren't full of numbers, like most typical zoning regulations are, doesn't mean they're any less effective. It's a matter of how we apply them. And it's hard when you have a volunteer board applying those guidelines because volunteers come and go. Therefore, your consistency in terms of volunteers go, volunteers go. So the consistency in which they're applied can vary greatly over the years. And that's just a reality. These guidelines we have now are so much more objective than the guidelines that I was working with when I was sitting on TRC. This is the generation after what we were dealing with, and those were so subjective that you couldn't even hardly wrap your head around what they meant. Our guidelines are great. As a designer, which is actually where the process starts, and not necessarily with the builder. Our guidelines give you great direction in terms of what the intent is. And in the hands of a professional who understands them, are quite effective. It comes down to how they're interpreted by any given individual because they aren't full of facts and figures. They're not full of numbers. They allow some subjective creativity on the part, not just of the designer, but on the part of DRC too, which gives them some latitude in terms of how they're applied. So I think that's a strength rather than a weakness, and it's been portrayed as a weakness of the guidelines that I don't think really exists. I promise you I don't have to hear from anymore. I don't think you should pass this the way it's written. I think there's work to do on it. I know there's a sense of urgency that I'm not sure I understand where it comes from, but I don't think this is in its current form ready for prime time. I think it's going to create some issues for your town administrator that he's probably not yet anticipated, nor can any of us really, but at least some pretty open, unanswered questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Jerry about that?
Really, we should.
I mean,
it's first reading.
Yeah,
And we just need to hear from and then it has to, at some point after an hour, come back to the board. Remember, it's first reading.
Right.
It's a long process, folks.
Yeah.
So, I think comments and then it'll be.
I just wanted to, Tom Peterson, I'm an architect. I've also lived here for longer than I had anticipated to. I've been here for 27 years. I think my letter was added to your packet. I just, anyway, so I just want to brief on that and kind of what Greg had mentioned too, that, I think between the guidelines that are there, those give us some designer, some guidance, towards that. And I understand and to Cindy's point, everything she's done, I know she's been so much more involved with everything historically, and thank God we have someone like her in the town to try to maintain what I think we all do want to maintain. I don't think we're all looking to build big monstrosities where they're inappropriate. And I guess my concern, I'll try to keep it brief as well, but just from the designer standpoint, that the things I see that's listed here, as far as adding a layer of floor area as a restriction to that, there are other items in there I think that need to be addressed to get a comprehensive help for us, for the designers, that, and a lot of those, I'll agree, definitions that should be more clearly defined, and those are outlined in the letter I proposed. And I want to. I guess I'm not, my biggest point, I guess, and to Craig's point, that I'm not sure I don't know what this 0.4 FAR really means to everybody in the collective historic district. I'm a designer. I haven't worked with FAR very often. I don't run across it a lot in residential architecture, which is my main thing. Not to say that it can't be an effective tool. I'm not sure. There are other tools and other ways we can control. I think it's a mass and bulk issue that is of concern to the historic character of the town, and in which the guidelines do address. And if those do have legal ramifications and legal weight to them for the design review board to say, no, that's not appropriate for this lot, I think that is, I mean, I agree that they should be, it should be hard for the design review board to, or it shouldn't be a conflict for them to have to fight against the zoning regs. So I understand where somebody's coming from that standpoint. Just the fact that, I'm trying to think what else I want to point out specifically that lost my train of thought. But basically there's more that needs to be considered, I guess, in the big picture of it all, that I don't know that we have, again, we started out with 0.3, then we went to 0.35, and now it's at 0.4. I think that's kind of reflective of, I don't know if any of us are really sure what those numbers mean. In the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish. And so to that end, I guess I don't know if FAR is the right, method, and what number is the right number to really apply. Kind of back to Cindy's point, I don't want to be, picking apart things, but when she, we talk about a 4,000 square foot house, and put 2,000 square foot on this 5,000 square foot lot. The first 2,000 includes porches, it includes a garage, so those are not counted against the FAR, but they do count against your lot coverage. So in theory, you can't put, you couldn't even put a 2,000 square foot house on a 5,000 square foot lot, because on a single floor, because you wouldn't have a porch and you wouldn't have a garage, if that's part of someone's desire to have a garage. So, which means, yes, you can go up 2 stories and then, but you're just further restricting what can be built towards that. So I don't, again, there's kind of intertwining parts of the zoning regs, and that's an example of one that, we're affecting, okay, we can build this many square feet, but we can't really build that much on the first floor if we have a garage, or if we have a larger front porch than our neighbor, so those are, again, it's just, there's some things there that it doesn't, it's a start, and I know the DRC and Planning Commission has made a lot of effort to try to wrap their heads around it, and I just don't know if it's there yet. That's kind of tapping onto what Craig was saying there.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
It's a technical question.
Well, let me try and kind of bring things together and just, sort of bring this back up to the board. As I see it, what was proposed by DRC and Planning Commission was as a result of perceiving a conflict between the guidelines that DRC is working with and the regulations that Planning Commission is charged with upholding. And it was sufficient conflict that it was decided by a joint meeting of the two commissions to try and figure out how to not be so far apart that then one seems to be allowing all this, and then the other is pulling it back and saying, oh, no, 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 which then starts to feel very subjective when you're the applicant saying, but this is what I want. And so I see the what has driven this, and I like the fact that you guys kept going back. The two commissions met again together, brought in information from the public. I appreciate all of the effort that went into it. I think there's always room for tweaking. Definitions can be clarified, all kinds of things can be done. I worked in the building department for the county for over 27 years. So I know you don't start out with perfection and just stay there. You continue, it continues to evolve. And but I think what we've come up with is kind of a, let's call it a starting point for, well, it's not even a starting point because there's already been a lot of work put into it, and the input was thoughtfully incorporated into what we've got in front of us tonight. So I'd like to bring it back to our board and just figure out whether, Jerry, do you have any comments before we?
No, I'm a process guy.
Okay.
You know, and you've heard a lot of comment. It's first reading.
Yeah, I know.
It's not
I
a
know.
public hearing.
Yeah.
So at some point, you know, you've heard at first reading what you need to hear, and you'll have another shot at it. And so your choices are, as usual, three. You can take a motion to postpone this ordinance indefinitely because it's a bad idea. You should start over. It's one door. Another door is you can approve it on first reading, and it's going to get set for public hearing, and we'll do some of this again. But it might, you know, what you've heard might affect what you end up doing. And of course, you continue first reading if you think that you don't want it to proceed to second reading in the present form. So those are the three.
Okay.
Those are the three.
That's kind of what I thought you were going to propose.
I don't have an opinion on the merits because it's not, I should.
That's okay. Yep.
So there's that.
Yep. Okay.
So it's really, I think, for the board, a little discussion, somebody can make a motion to
Okay.
do one of those three things, and we'll see what happens. We've had an hour or so.
Yep.
It's probably about right.
Yep. So
Did we ever get the contractor planner?
the temporary
whatever
planning
you wanna call
consultant.
it.
Mhm.
The interim planner involved in this. That was one of the things that we had discussed in December when this first came, that would be a part of this process. And there were other concerns that we had at that time when we heard this. To help DRC, the planning commission, us, whomever, every stakeholder in this room and then some, to go through this process. So did that happen? Okay.
No, we had Martin Landers very involved to get to the point to start with the first memo and ordinance. So he was the one who helped construct that first part. And then when we broke it up, we have not taken it to community matters yet.
And I thought community manners was being charged more with coming up with the process, you know, the step 1, step 2, step 3 process.
They are looking at that part.
At that piece.
But that was going to be a part of this ultimate ordinance that was going to be brought to us. They were gonna be working with DRC and Plan Commission, and then we had some other pieces along the way where we had questions whether or not everything was properly publicly posted or not, and it's my understanding, and I haven't gone back through every agenda and every minute of the last couple of weeks, that some of these meetings have been scheduled. Maybe the last one with Planning Commission didn't have a quorum, so they didn't have the meeting. Maybe they had the work session. I don't know. I don't think from everyone's input here, I may be wrong. I may be wrong. I'm not comfortable certainly going on any first reading, whether we table first reading. So I'll bring it back. I'm not comfortable acting on this as it is now. Either we table it so that the process can continue. I don't think the door needs to be shut on it though, but
Okay.
so. Next.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time visualizing kind of why we need this. I always thought the DRC was pretty good about maintaining the Vulcan mass, so the houses were similar in a row and whatnot. As I've designed different places and built different houses through the years, and I use, the original footprints that I'm allowed and work from there, but I'm also aware that they have to match in certain situations, the streetscape and whatnot. So I look at the far things here, excuse me, and it looks like a 0.4 is huge compared to this color chart. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. So I think I need more time maybe to understand just exactly why this is causing so much problem between the Planning Commission and the DRC. Maybe more of a promotion of the DRC's guidelines before people even go to the Planning Commission. No.
They don't know.
Why is the Planning Commission having a problem with this?
We're in agreement with the designer review commission.
He's just asking why did this start about? So explain, like Cindy explained it earlier.
Maybe I missed the.
And I don't believe, and Jerry can correct, I don't believe that the guidelines have the same force of law as the bulk area and bulk regulations. I mean, our area and bulk regulations were passed by this board, and Craig's correct. The board also passes the design guidelines, but I'm not sure. That's an issue that we as DRC have always understood that the area and bulk regulations, because they are codified specifically, have a standing that guidelines do not have, and maybe that's our misunderstanding. That could be our misunderstanding. But yeah, they don't go to the Planning Commission, they read the area and bulk regulations and act upon them. They should be able to. I mean, that's why we have area and bulk regulations. Okay. And then they come to the DRC.
I still think I would feel like we're missing something here with the DRC not being promoted ahead of time. I don't.
Because there is no ahead of time, because you don't need to come to anybody.
Well, Tom Peterson's saying he's aware when he's designing a house that it needs to match.
Well, he's been here 27 years. I mean, it's the person who buys the lot who has not accustomed to the process. Will first look in the book and see what your area and bulk regulations are. Sure they will.
Okay, Bob.
Okay.
I'd just like to add, where this started sometime last fall is recently, and I guess recently, maybe it goes back further than that. things would kind of get out of sequence from our perspective. People would come to the DRC with, beautiful drawing, they spend a lot of money doing architectural drawings for something they want to build. And then there were two aspects, I think there still are two aspects to this proposed thing. DRC would be compelled to go through and, look at what they're proposing and request changes and that kind of thing. Prior to them going to planning commission and because there may be code issues that, we have no jurisdiction over. So what started this is trying to solve the problem of going to the planning commission first and making sure that there are no code issues. And then go to the DRCs. Once, I think this is what started, someone came to the planning commission, and said, well, the DRC has already approved what we want to build, yet it didn't meet the code. So we wanted to change the sequence that, get all the legal issues out on the table, get them resolved, and then go to the DRC for a COA. So this ordinance would take care of that issue. And in the course of doing that, we had concerns that there was nothing that stipulated the size of the house. And a lot of this is focused on the vertical height, not fitting in the area, which is, we have guidelines for that. But they don't have the teeth in our guidelines to make a code issue that, you can't build a 4-story house in an area.
Even though we have high requirements at 35 feet. We would come to DRC, we would start commenting on that, but there's no legal, that was our take anyway, there was no legal restriction from them, putting in something to, that doesn't fit in the area. That's kind of, and I'm sure I'm not explaining this very clearly. I'm trying to get.
Why actually,
Okay. Trying to get aligned with the planning commission.
Got that.
And the code. So that the DRC guidelines support the code.
Okay.
And vice versa.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Before I take more public comments, let me get to the rest of the board. Rob, where do you stand on what we've got in front of us is first reading?
Well, I was kind of ground zero with this whole thing. I mean, judging from where I lived and what's being built across the street, it's hard for me to steer away from something like this, so.
So you're in support of the.
I lived in an Isle house, so that, what is that? 900 square feet, something like that. And now I'm looking right into your bedroom. Yeah.
Put some blinds up.
The view was like amazing off that, and I guess it still is, as long as you keep your chin up. But, that's the thing. It's, there ought to be, that neighborhood doesn't fit, in the small neighborhood. The houses don't fit. In my opinion.
Okay, but as far as this ordinance goes, let's focus, focus back here. So we're on first reading. We've got 3 choices that Jerry laid out.
A lot of comment. It doesn't seem like we've got any kind of like solid ground. I think we ought to probably, table it and maybe, take some more comments and research this a little bit more.
Okay.
One of the things I don't want to do, I don't want families not to move here. I don't want to do that, but then again, I also want to keep the integrity of the, historic district too.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but the fact that we're a whole town and we're a landmark, that's unheard of. Isn't that unheard of? You've got like in Philadelphia, you'd think Philadelphia would be like one big landmark district. No, it's a street here and there. That's it. So, I mean, the fact that we're a landmark district is pretty important, I think.
It is.
Yes.
It is. Deanne,
We haven't heard from you yet. You're muted. We're still not hearing from you.
I
There
thought
you
this
go.
was just fine back in January when it first came in front of us. Like Bob Hamilton was just saying, they kept doing things out of sequence, and it's a whole lot like go ask your mother, go ask your father. People would come with a plan and get it before DRC. DRC would struggle with it, and then it would go over to planning. And it should have gone there first because there was some code problem that just threw the whole thing out. It's important to have the regulations spelled out very precisely so that we don't have people feeling with their noses out of joint. No, you only did this to those guys, but not to those guys. We need it to be written down. I find I've listened to quite a few of the planning and DRC meetings that this was discussed at. We have got to protect our historic district. If people want to build a big house, then they need to do it someplace else. It needs to fit in with Georgetown. You don't sit there and say, oh, Georgetown's so quaint and wonderful. I want to move there. And then I want to change everything about it so that it messes it up for everybody else, including future generations. It's not okay. The wording of this right now is just fine. We need to enact it, and then we need to, if it needs any changing or buffering or whatever, then we can go back and do that. But it's not okay for people to come here and say, but I want to build a big house, or I want to add on to my house, whether it's, okay or not. When you buy a pair of brown shoes, you can't sit there and say, well, I think I'm going to paint them white now. It has to be, you have to know what you're getting into from the get-go. And we are not like any place else. We have to guard the history. We have to guard our National Historic Landmark status. And it's just unacceptable to try to do things and say, well, yeah, that was fine 10 years ago, but now we need to be able to build it higher. It's not okay. I think the way it's written is just fine, and I'd like to vote on it tonight, but we have to go through a second hearing. So, all right.
Okay. So
I've got a question, just, I guess more it's a point of order. This is the first time that I've experienced a first reading tabled that had a lot of public comment. And normally it's just from my past experience, and I understand this is a charged issue, but I'm just trying to go through the point of order. My understanding was you do a first reading, you make a decision on it, and then the second reading goes into public comment. And so we're kind of like doing public comment first, and it's dragging it on. So now we're almost like at the point where how do you even pick up the pieces from here? Because it is so, it's I don't know what to kind of, that's why I'm asking for a point of order. Where do we go? Because now we've not had order of 5-minute comments. We've had comments going over and over and over and over. And so I'm just asking Jerry, what do we do?
Well, it's Lynette owns the meeting and I don't. So
I'm sorry, I think that's Lynette.
That's just that's just true. She can cut off comment at any time. It's her choice to do that. On first reading, typically, we don't have there is no rule in the code that says you can't take comment on first reading. There are other cities that say there will be no comment on first reading, and the only purpose is to set a hearing. That's not true here. And there's a long tradition for the decade or so I've been doing this of allowing public comment when there are people showing up that wanted to talk, that had made time, that showed up, and you kind of don't want to tell them, sorry, thanks for coming, but come back in 2 weeks. That's not the tradition here. Perfectly fine. But you've heard over an hour on the subject, and at some point it's not New England town government style, it truly isn't. It looks like that sometimes. But I feel, I'm a process guy, you all know that. And at some point, you've elected these people to make that decision. You don't make it like with an applausometer, in the, see, and very few people know that reference anymore, the older I get. Sad, but sad, but true. So, it comes back to the board and you still have those three choices. It's pretty clear to me that there probably wouldn't be majority support to just move it forward tonight. I'm hearing. It does occur to me that the section 2 of the ordinance that makes clear that you got to go to planning commission first, then DRC might be something that you could amend everything else out and approve that section and get that one going and out of the way. If that's causing a real problem, maybe it isn't. And it's easier just to, sounds like it isn't. It's probably easier just to take a motion to table it, and it's either table for 2 weeks or it's table for a longer period of time. That's to me the more important dialogue here based on what we've heard. So at some point somebody's gonna have to make a motion, table it for a given amount of time, or to say yes or no. And those are the doors, and at some point you got to pick one that I keep giving you.
That's what I was here.
I can only tell you what the choices are. And somebody's got it.
This is where the contestant turns to the audience and looks for the,
Something.
Okay.
Was it John?
I'll make a motion to table this for 2 weeks.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion and second to table it for 2 weeks. Any further discussion from the board?
I think we should just vote on it tonight.
Well, we're voting on the motion.
No, I mean, accept or deny, but I know
I
that's out of
understand.
sync. Yeah.
I understand, but what we've got is a motion to table it for 2 weeks. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passed.
So we're just bringing it back.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah, 2 weeks from now.
That's the effect of your action.
Yes.
I can't help that.
So I don't think this is as simple as just putting one before the other. It seems like there's still a lot of issues that planning and DRC have before you bring any recommendations to us to support changing the sizes of any of it or the ratios of any of it. It's the process that I understood back from the whatever meeting it was, where we were going to get our interim consultants in to help you redefine the process. Let's change that and then start making the changes within each of your domains.
That's in your ordinance. That's the first part that Jerry was talking about.
But I don't think it's just an easy flip to do that.
It's
Well, let's do it now unless I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very straightforward.
Okay,
Honestly.
next, let's move this on, so we're not here all night. As I understand it, then that would bring in resolution number 5, which
I'm sorry, go ahead. Keep going. I was touching.
which would extend the moratorium if we think we need it. So everybody has that, did I put it?
Very much.
Yeah. It's in there.
Yeah,
Yes.
so do we,
So
do we think we need it?
do we have anything pressing?
Yes.
Are they? Is it something that could, is it something that could be considered by the other commissions?
Conditionally?
Yeah, thank you. So that, so we have it both ways. I mean, yes, there's a moratorium because we feel that this is something that needs to be addressed, but not tonight. But without holding up someone for 6 months, because we're still working on it.
Yeah, we do have an application that is pending. Now it's been pushed twice because of the first moratorium, second. And this resolution was basically asking if we can exempt something that would not hold up the ordinance, but at the same time wouldn't allow them to kind of continue. It's an addition. And it's still under the FAR, so it would not exceed that. Even the 0.3 wasn't going to exceed. And
So it wouldn't fall within, it falls within the old guidelines and it falls within what might become new guidelines.
correct. It would be way under new guidelines, but they're being held back because of the moratorium.
Let them start going through the process.
Well, you have two things to think about. The moratorium expires tomorrow. So really the first, if you don't extend the moratorium, then you don't need to make any exceptions to it. You're done.
Right.
Right, but if we want to keep the moratorium for something new that walks in the doors tomorrow or Thursday,
Yeah, that's the second thing. But the decision you make first, I think, is do we want the moratorium to continue? Because if you don't have to get to this other issue.
Correct.
So, I mean, you first need to decide, do you want to extend the moratorium? And then you need to decide, do you want to have exemptions to it?
I think the issue is worth the moratorium continuing. But I would like to allow this particular applicant, from what you're saying, or even, maybe there's going to be another one that walks in the door under similar circumstances, that it's not going to be a big issue one way or the other. But I want to respect DRC and Planning Commission, but we also have a heck of a lot of people here that have brought value to my position. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for the letters that were submitted. And for us to weigh this out. This isn't a decision that can just, and I know you guys have put a lot of work into this. I get that. And so I don't want to pull a rug out from under them until we feel comfortable with what we've got, and we're not there yet. But I don't want everybody building square foot, houses. So
the selectmen in this board support this. The selectmen who represent this board support this.
And I think that's great, but I also take exception to that because I appreciate living in this town, and I'm sorry that I live not in this ward.
Well,
and I value this ward, so I'm sorry, I take exception with that. But you're entitled to your opinion as I am with mine.
Well, from a process standpoint, being a process guy, and just trying to help you move through this. It would seem to me, what I'm sensing is you want to extend the moratorium quite likely to be able to buy the time for the ordinance to either get better or not get better. So you probably want to have resolution number 5 do two things: extend the moratorium to pick a date a month out, perhaps. If you're going to go through first and second reading on any ordinance, though, it's probably 2 months out. So right now it's March 1st, so April and May 1st. And as a part of that motion, you can also enact section 2 of this draft that's in front of you and amend the moratorium resolution to exempt a class of applications. And I'm going to need help describing what that class of applications is. Rick, can you help?
Well, I mean, I think the question that I am thinking right now is, I don't think that there is an issue from the DRC on a 0.4. I think the question is bigger. So could we have an exemption of anything less than 0.4? That at least allows us to keep things moving until we can get the scale and bulk decided. Because I'm suspecting, I'm sympathetic because I love economic development, and I'm afraid that we're going to miss our building window if we keep pushing out 2 or 3 or 4 months from now. Then we're done for this whole next year or this year. So my suggestion would be, can we exempt anything less than 0.4?
Or 0.4 or less.
Correct.
So whatever, yeah.
0.4 or less.
So does that need a motion?
Yeah, I'm constructing it in a second.
Yeah.
You've absconded with my car.
Yeah, sorry. I really need it. I really need it.
I listen.
Well, what you could do is adopt, could be a motion to adopt resolution number 5. With following changes that in section 1 of resolution number. Yeah, it's interestingly, it's resolution number. Okay, in section 1, that it be amended to say that the resolution number 5 is amended by extending the date of the term of the moratorium to May 1st, 2023, by renumbering the sections as indicated, in the adoption of a new section 2 to read the following class of applications are exempt from this moratorium. Applications proposing 0.4 FAR or less in size. So what that motion would do, if somebody's thinking about saying somebody would be.
Hang on.
And I'm in Ward 3, that's why.
It's moving so slow, and then all of a sudden. So that motion to extend the moratorium to May the 1st, and it would exempt from the moratorium applications proposing developments of 0.4 FAR or less.
So moved again.
So there's a second, motion a second.
Motion and a second.
I'm in Ward 2.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Me, I don't think we can do this because it's not actually in the books. We're kind
Okay.
of being arbitrary here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much,
Feel
everybody.
free to stay though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too hard to, I don't think I can.
From the DRC to the planning commission in the next 8 weeks.
Let me talk about it with
Okay.
Rick. Let's,
You're right.
yeah, that's a good question.
Is it legal for somebody in the DRC just present like a paper? Not, I don't know, but probably just give it to the select.
Sure, it's a public meeting. Anybody, no matter what path they were.
Okay, that's right.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, there's some people who are going to be able to. Yeah.
It seems like DRC means something. Period.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot of push to. Because it's never.
Thanks, Betsy.
DRC says.
Yeah.
I think you need
All right.
to figure out, really. Let's hold it up. Guys.
Hello. Okay.
All right, we're back to it. Next is ordinance number 2, series 2023. This is a first reading continued. An ordinance amending chapter 13.20 of title 13 of the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning service line requirements for accessory dwelling units.
Okay, so you got your action item, and I did not have a lot of information at the time I wrote this, however, got a lot of information that came in today, and then I was able to send it to you. And the reason why this was a little difficult is because you kind of had charged me to kind of get feedback from Ryan and from Dan Wester. And so I reached out to Dan twice with no comment. And I think Dan's more in the realm of, I'm not legislative, that's not my world. I don't want to But he saw it, but this gave no comment.
Okay.
However, I'm sorry.
Which to me would indicate that he has no objection, that it
Correct.
doesn't conflict with.
Correct. That's the way I took it too.
Okay.
I did not look at it as he was wanting to see change. However, Ryan did review the memo that Craig had created, gave his comments. I took those comments to Craig, and this is a new memo that could be, well, it was changed. One is it was chart form because Ryan wanted to see a chart to help developers and individual homeowners, whether they fit in whichever category of existing structure with an existing ADU, existing structure with a proposed ADU, and a new structure with a new ADU. Those were the three categories.
Okay.
And so he kind of gave direction of how to do that. The only thing, I mean, the two things that changed on this memo was the chart, and then second was on existing single-family residential structures with proposed ADUs. What Ryan felt very strongly about was when you get an engineer to go assess, he wanted to make sure, because it's a proposed, he wanted to make sure looking at the service line of the house that's tying into, because it's an existing structure, what's the age of the home, of the line, the current service line, what's the size, what's the material, what's the depth? Because that's really the issue that Ryan had, because we're looking at grandfathered in if it's already existing ADU. And for new construction, well, there's whole new guidelines, but the whole point was to make sure that we had an engineer assess that and they gave feedback. So I feel like he's done a great job. Craig and they both have worked together to explain Craig's perspective from an engineer design capabilities of going into the IRC code book and creating guidelines. And so anyways, this is what they both actually agreed upon. And so I'm bringing that back to you.
So now we've got all the feedback.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So this existing family residential structure with the ADU. Am I reading this not correct? It says one, provide all this stuff, and then it says two, provide a separate. So essentially they're just saying like a separate, no matter what you do, you're providing a second water line, separate.
So you have two options. Yeah, so if you take this, you have two options. Maybe the number one could actually be, you have the right to put a new line in.
Always.
Always. You can put a new line in without having to go to an architect or engineer.
That's fine.
Yeah, and so, but if you want to have the ability to not have a separate line, then you have to go through the engineer to assess this and to sign off and agree that this would be sufficient.
And 40, they call it water.
EQRs. No, the water supply.
Water supply.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, one thing, and I wish Craig would have stayed here. He told me that is not saying when you say it's 40 that each are individual counted.
No, but you go to you go into what section was it? 2903.6. You look at the IRC.
Right.
A typical house has 25. So if you have a smaller structure, you'd easily be under the requirements, right? Look at it. You'd easily be under those requirements and not have to have any line.
But Ryan understood it with the 40 and he was okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was.
Yeah.
So really, that's open the door to not have a second meter or a line.
Right, but you're still having an engineer evaluate
Yeah,
this.
you still look at it.
Yeah, it's not just average homeowner submits. Yeah, I've got less than 40 and, yeah.
Well, okay, in an average home, they're gonna be under the 25. And they're gonna have the 15 they can build this small unit with.
Right.
Theoretically.
And that was Craig's argument when he communicated this. An average home fit well in the spec of having an ADU connected to it, because when you look at the number, the IRC basically said, yeah, your pressure and everything is sufficient.
Right.
Even like for just a regular home, this is not gonna be an issue. It's the larger homes that really.
You want to get the pot filler over your stove, so you don't have to carry the pasta pot. Your dog now has its own little fountain. You know,
I'm seeing a lot of homes with dog showers.
I seriously.
That's not funny.
I know, and that's how they're,
Yeah.
So. Okay.
How about our water guy?
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, all I can think of when I think of an accessory unit is like, you know, basically a renovated tough shed,
Oh,
right?
no.
Fancy.
No.
There could be a garage that turns into
Yeah,
a.
with an apartment above. They call them granny flats. They call them.
Oh, okay, that's because it's a lot, they're not really.
Fucking efficient.
Gotta need. Building code for residential, I have a sizable point is only there, all of them.
Yeah.
There you go.
Since they moved the camera, the sound has gone muddy. When it was back further to catch the public comments and stuff, it was fine. The only one that's been,
The camera has
5 minutes has been Rob.
Okay, the camera on my, I moved the laptop closer.
Do we have
today.
a motion we can?
Okay.
Here.
That's
It's 12 and a half hours today, so we're getting, it's no little time.
Yep, I hear you. I hear you.
The form of,
All right.
if I can help you with the process, the
Yeah.
form of the ordinance number 2 that's in front of you. Reflects. Almost word for word, Craig's February 14th memo,
Right.
and that's great, I wrote it all up, went in the back, and then Craig produced. His
Yet another.
February 26th memo,
Yeah.
which isn't really much like what's in your packet. So you've got a couple choices. You can continue first reading and have me rework the ordinance to say all this. Although the categories in his new memo match up more or less with the categories here. Since it's first reading, right? It's first reading.
Yes.
What you could do is take a motion to approve ordinance number 2, sort of 2023 on first reading with the substitution of the material in the Abrahamson February 26th memorandum for the relevant sections in the current draft. And that will give you one that I can fix in the second.
You'll send that to me.
Yeah, I will. Yeah,
Right,
yeah, I will.
That'd be fancy.
Okay, all right.
so Mary.
Gary?
Okay. Okay.
Help a lot.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve.
Ordinance number.
Ordinance
reading
number
the amendments described.
Yes, yes.
How about that?
Okay. I was getting
No,
there.
that's.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks so much, everybody. Okay, next we have ordinance number 4, series 2023. This is first reading, first time. No, yes, it is first reading, first time. An ordinance amending the Georgetown Municipal Code to provide a definition for accessory dwelling unit.
And what I've done here on the staff report here, and when you eventually do get this prior ordinance done, it talks about accessory dwelling units, right? And it says, here's what the rules are, it might be, or will be, when you do that on second reading. There's no definition in both the zoning code and utilities title for accessory dwelling unit. So I created one that's pretty straightforward. I've used this definition.
Okay, so it's the generic.
Yeah, it gives you a generic definition. Then when you adopt the other ordinance, somebody knows what the heck an accessory dwelling unit is. So I urge its adoption on first reading.
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 4, series 2023.
I'll second it.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 4, series 2023 on first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Next, we have ordinance number 5, series 2023, also on first reading, first time. These are text amendments to the Gateway Commercial District.
The staff report on that as well. And this harks back to sort of a study session level discussion the board had a couple of months ago about mixed use buildings and gateway commercial and the degree to which presently the code says, look, you can have residential in gateway commercial, but it's a special use to begin with, and the residential can't be the primary use of the property taken as a whole, only commercial can be. And that has precluded some mixed use developments. And so the board had I thought a constructive discussion about, well, what could we do to lighten that rule up a little bit and still encourage mixed use development in gateway commercial, but not completely result in developments just being residential, because of course the whole point with gateway commercial is you want to preserve your commercial district for commercial purposes. The market is so tilted toward residential that it's easy for people to do that, and you don't want to see that escape, and that's why you wanted mixed use. But there's been some projects that have been precluded, and maybe you want to lighten up the rule a little, remembering that it still is a special use permit, so you still have control there. But so what I have done is taken the notes from that meeting and put it into sort of as you see, it's the new subsection C7. The following use configurations satisfy the requirement of this primary use of the property taken as a whole. And so any of these would satisfy it. But let me point out the first two are alternative to each other. You only pick one. But I wrote them, it's a buffet, this first two, because in the first two, the second floor can be all residential as long as the first floor is commercial. Okay. The second one is, look, the minimum composition on the first floor. So that allows you to have some residential even on the first floor. So it weakens the rule a little bit more. And it's a policy choice for you. I don't care what you pick, but you'll notice there's a difference there. So if you want to just make sure the first floor is always commercial, you take the first bullet. If you want to lighten up a little bit, you take the second bullet instead, but you got to plug in a percentage, and that's your job to do. The last two bullets aren't alternatives to each other. They're just additional ways things can happen. If you have individual structures in a horizontal mixed use development, as long as at least 50% commercial use, a whole building could be residential, so long as in total it's 50%. Now you could change that percentage if you wanted, but that's the notes I took from what you told me a few months ago. Then you said, well, show us other things too. And so that's the last one is kind of a catch-all, and it's again, it's a special use review. So if somebody had some alternate development, they don't get that just per se. They would have to show that to you in a special use context, and you'd have to determine that the overall development appears primarily commercial. And if that was not your determination on the special use hearing, you'd say no. But clearly, that's another outlet. The last two paragraphs are not configurations, but they're rules that you told me to do last time, which is that the commercial development has to be completed prior to or simultaneous with residential. Don't just build the residences and now the commercial stays vacant forever. So I implemented that. And lastly, this was a request that Rick suggested you would want. You can exempt your own property, your own town projects from any zoning rule. It's very clear you can do that, but you have to say so in your code. And so I said, town-owned property is exempt, but you still got to get a special use permit. That one is your little ticket, get out of jail free ticket that you can write for yourselves in any way you like, and that's how I chose to write it.
That goes with experience. That just comes from experience.
Yeah. So, what's in front of you, I guess, is if this looks like it's sort of getting there on first reading, you could approve it on first reading, pick one of the first two doors, which are alternative to one another, that you gotta pick, and decide you like or don't like, and you can tinker with or send it on for public hearing, the remainder of it.
Don't we want to remain flexible on the first reading? Because we can tighten it up on the second.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would imagine
You could leave them both in and have the public.
door number 2, I believe is. Well, in other words, door number 2 with the percentage that you can write in.
Yeah.
Right.
And we can.
So you want to talk about it later, you're done talking for the night, you want to discuss it more? I'm fine with that.
Well, I just think that, in other words, it's the first reading. What we just need to do is sort of kind of, it's like, it's almost like at the process of a picture. All we're doing is creating the frame. We can work on the contents of the picture later, in the second reading. Right?
That's eloquent. I don't
Wow,
disagree.
Yeah.
Bravo. You really? Yeah. So that would be great. Want to make a motion to approve ordinance number 5 as written on first reading. You could do that if you want. Do it.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve.
Who did the motion and who seconded? Because the sound went all garbly, then lots of people were talking at the same time. What?
The ball guys. Motion. Chanel second. Jennings.
Got it?
It was the motion of follically challenged.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance number 5, series 2023. An ordinance amending the Georgetown Municipal Code concerning mixed-use buildings in the Gateway Commercial District on first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't think so. Good job, people. Okay, next we have the added action item of a contract for services for Luke Hecker.
On the staff report on that, the CIRSA is handling the potential claim or the claim against the town in connection with the Christian Glass matter. And so CIRSA is our insurance company, and they do that for us. The attorneys that I've been assigned to the case need the assistance of this person who is a police procedures expert. And it's important that they have an evaluation by that expert so that they can crank that into their work in following up and representing the town as that claim moves forward. This is the person who I've looked at his CV, et cetera. He's someone that is well experienced to do that work. It's an expert that's the attorneys from CIRSA that I have great confidence in would like to and really need to assist them. Our charter and code do require that contracts be signed by the police judge, not the administrator. And so for that reason, it's in front of you, but a proper motion would be to approve the signature by the police judge of the contract with Mr. Hecker. So second.
Can you please spell his last name? H-E?
C-K-E-R.
Thank you.
I just had one question. Since it's got provisions in here for travel reimbursement, where is he traveling from? Because I couldn't find an address in here.
He's out of state. I'm afraid I just don't recall where.
Okay.
I just don't know.
Okay.
Sorry. This is one and the nature of this case is that you need the right person.
Yes.
And
I got it. I just wanted to know what to expect.
I wish I could tell you I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think he's Parisian.
What does LPEV1 stand for? You know that, what his credentials are besides?
Law. It's.
That's all right, I'll Google it.
Yeah, you're gonna need to have to do that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Any other further discussion? It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract for
Who moved and who seconded?
Rob and John seconded it.
Thank you.
Okay. For professional services for Luke Hecker, and this is for law enforcement consulting services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, staff items. Town administrators report and task.
I have nothing to report.
Excellent.
Good job.
I wish.
Give that man a raise.
Tell us.
I will take my time to slowly go through all my.
Oh, my God.
Cindy Neely, I am not going to give her report. I'm just going to hand it to you and you can read it later. And this is Cindy Neely's update on the Arlington North project.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
so.
Right.
So don't want to bore you with that, but I think it's, we picked a engineering contractor. Oh, yeah, so it's right there. Also, just a second. That's second. Deanne asked to give an update on the short-term rental. And so I did speak to the short-term rental, which is 401 and a half 6th Street. So it's basically across the street. It's behind the house. And the owner I gave him over a week to examine any past history and the code, to bring any new information that I may have, that I didn't have to as I'm evaluating the situation. He came back and said, I agree with you. And I have already been thinking about this and I'm going to turn into a long-term rental anyways. So he still keeps one of his permits and the other one was revoked. So actually there was no issue at all. I also sent out to all of our short-term rental community the letters to just let others know you can only have one short-term rental on your property. It was brought to our attention that there were some doing multiple rentals at one time. I did send warning letters to those two, but the whole community who's part of the short-term rental did get the same letter so that they would be aware that they too can't do that. Even if they thought about doing it, you can't do it. I had none of the, I'll tell you that, they had two people contacted me and said, thank you for letting me know it's not me. So, good. We did submit our water lease to the county today. Today was the deadline. And we had, and let me make sure I get the name right. I can't remember, Rabinal or something like that.
Oh, our water
engineer,
engineer, yeah,
I can't think of her first name, but anyways, I did speak to her. She had right about, yeah, that's it. She did conclude that we're using the same numbers that we submitted last year because there's no change for Bighorn at this point. In a year, we'll reevaluate to see where they are. But since the development has changed 3 times since I've been here, I don't know if they're going to be finished the build in a year. So we're good to use those numbers. And there's still some fluctuation in the numbers that if it does exceed, we're still fine. So the numbers that she submitted, we did give to Lisa Laban today to the county. So that was good. The Christmas decorations are going to go before the Parks and Rec Board, and that's to purchase 19 those and garland and the wreaths for Arlington Street, which will match what we have downtown. It's the same vendor, and so there is they extended their discount season for us because they know that we're going to do it, but we want to go ahead and get ahead of the curve this year and not be in the situation that we were in last year. So we'll have all that done, but it's up to the Parks Board to make that decision. But we've done all the work on it. And then the other thing that I just brought to your attention is none of the poles have outlets in them. There's 38 poles. We're only going to do 19, but we have an electrician that's probably coming tomorrow or the next day who will teach our road and bridge crew how to put the outlets in. So that will actually save us a lot more money. And they,
It's like $5,000.
yeah, it was 5,500, the quote, but basically we're gonna eliminate that. And
Who's the electrician?
I don't know. The quote we got from Triangle, but this is another electrician that Scooter was talking to about it, doing the electrical work at the road and bridge. They're doing the LED lights exchange. And that guy said, I'll teach you how to do this. Which was,
It's Triangle.
it is Triangle.
That's Triangle doing the shop
Okay.
up there.
Okay.
So, this one, already resolution. And this.
Yeah.
What about, what about your meeting today?
Okay, so the meeting, I think what we concluded, Jerry and I had discussed this, and Lynette.
Who'd you meet with?
We met with, Peter Lichtman, George Marlin, and Brian Balsart with the county.
Right.
And we had our representative meeting to discuss it. We did communicate that, we chose path one, which was, we want you to stop collecting, and we don't agree to any of the conditions. Lynette did a fabulous job of communicating that. She didn't say that per se, but communicated what you guys had recommended. And they agreed that they are going to go into executive session. And if they can come to an agreement, then what we're going to be posed back to then create a letter together, and then we'll kind of go from there. So, but we're moving forward.
No.
Two, I think, the vendors, right? The vendors, yeah.
Vendors.
Yeah,
Lodging.
Vendors, lodging vendors,
Yes,
but we're moving forward.
the Hiltons.
right.
So they'll meet on the 7th. And then we'll have further feedback for you on the 14th. With the ultimate goal of having a resolution and communication out to the vendor, the lodging vendors the next day, 15th. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And I feel very comfortable and optimistic that will happen.
So maybe the last thing would be, Deanne had asked about an update for sound and equipment, things like that. So I'm going to defer to Jen.
I still have a question on the last one.
Right.
Is there a way to get something in? Because since we've got the county collecting 2% and we're collecting 2%, one of those, which we know to be the county, is wrong. Is there a way to, in the negotiations, get them to refund to our vendors the overcharges?
No, there is not.
That makes me crazy that this is just money down a rat hole. And if they don't do it, they're in trouble with the state.
It's not really. I mean, that's one. The lodging tax that the county is collecting will go to good use. It's not wasted. It's unfortunate that
it's not legal though, and it's not fair to our vendors that they're paying 4% when they only need to pay 2%. 2% of that percent should be, if not returned to them physically, at least left on the books so that they can, like they're paid ahead, you know?
Okay.
But I think too, the situation that needs to be understood is, even if it was agreed upon on January 1st from the county, they would still have to make the request to the Department of Revenue, and they've communicated that they only make that change in July 1st and December 1st. And so just because we are talking to them now versus then, it doesn't matter. It depends on the Department of Revenue when they turn that on, and they will not reimburse. It's just a policy that they go through.
Okay. So back to the sound.
So I reached out to one guy and to talk about the sound. He had to refer me to his engineer, who I talked to, and I think really what the problem is, I don't think it's the sound, because whenever I go back and ask other people to listen to the recordings, everything's clear. What I feel the problem is, and what this guy is going to try to give us a proposal on, is like the video where you can't tell who's speaking. Because the shot's so far away, so the new piece of equipment would zone in on the speaker and it has voice recognition, so it knows to go. I don't even have to go, you know. And then.
I have a problem with that because there are times when I want to see the other board members' reactions. If it focuses in on just one.
Okay, and then it goes back out after, you know, I mean, we can't. Can't be at all.
Yeah, there's a limit on how interactive a virtual portal can be. And that limit is that it isn't going to be the same as if you're sitting in the room.
Yes.
And the town can't be required to provide that.
This is our official recording of the meeting. I got told that a whole bunch of times when I had problems with certain parts of the minutes. It's like, no. If you got a problem, you go to the tape, the recording, whatever. And so if this is our official recording and we're accepting it to be second class, I mean, if everybody did Zoom, then it's all crystal clear. The times when, like, say, for example, you, Jerry, and I have been the ones on, or you, I, and Rich, or something like that, our stuff is all totally clear. It's the stuff in the room that's all garbled and people talk over each other. And the next thing, there have been 3 or 4 times tonight when I had no idea what people were saying because 3 people were talking at the same time. That's got to be
rectified. No type of equipment is gonna correct it when people are talking at once, that we can't hear what's going on in the room when people are talking.
And
you guys were responding though, so you were hearing.
There's a distinction between what the clarity of the official record and and we have a good record, the recording is good. There's the clarity of that word, that's different than the degree to which if someone chooses to participate remotely, what the fact that when you choose to participate remotely, you're not here in person and the quality of your experience is necessarily different.
That is not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that the sound is not clear. I go back and listen to other meetings and stuff and different other groups, not meaning related to the town. They don't have a problem. There is something wrong with the acoustics in that room where you guys are sitting right now. And I actually think if there were individual microphones or at least one microphone for every 2 or 3 people, it would solve the problem. But it's not a clear recording. It's not a good quality recording of our official record meeting.
But when we go back and listen to the recordings that are archived, everybody says that it is good quality, except for you. Everybody else says it's good.
I've done it on about 5 different machines, some of them mine, some of them belonging to friends, where I'll go to YouTube and I'll sit there and pick up on some meeting and they're garbled. They're not.
Deanne, how about a little consideration that we're really trying to accommodate the hybrid meetings?
So
how about a little consideration that this is our official record and it needs to be the absolute best it can be, and it's not at the moment.
Okay, but I would like to give credit where credit is due, and Jen has been continuing to try and explore other options that might improve things. We haven't landed on the perfect solution yet, but she hasn't dropped it. So that's what we have tonight.
And we also do have this audio recording as a backup. So this is our audio recording too. We have 2.
So,
Honestly, I'm not worried about the official record with the greatest of respect, Deanne. Having said that, I've got one other thing to say. And that is that I've sat where you sat, I've attended some meetings virtually. I share your concern. It is a little frustrating as an observer, but I believe that the staff continues to work on it. I'm not going to sit as a virtual viewer and demand the blood from a turnip. We're trying, and Jen continues to try. As usual in life, it's a process, not an event. I'm not worried about the official record. That's beyond question. We're good there. We're left with trying to make the virtual experience better. And as an experiencer of the virtual experience, I have sympathy. I was in the spot you're in, and it's frustrating, but I also trust the staff here to be doing the best they can. And I do not expect them to snap their fingers and make it wonderful when they're dealing with technology. I expect them to keep working on it, and that's what they're doing.
Okay,
Thanks, Jen.
thank you.
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, we really want people, we're an isolated community. We're trying to help people that live out of town and want to come and can't come to the meeting. And Deanne, you've never ever been to an in-person meeting. So we don't have the cooties. And you live 2 blocks away, and maybe you could come to a meeting one time.
And maybe I have a health issue that I don't want to expose myself.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think that covered everything that we.
Well, I have one more thing.
Oh, yes.
And this is meet the candidates night, everybody.
Okay,
March 21st. You guys, I need help in what you guys want to do, because it was, kind of for people, for Robert and Lynette to kind of ask questions and talk about, but then somebody's like, well, aren't all of the candidates going to be there? So if you guys, we need to decide like what we want to do. It's at 6 o'clock. Do we want to should we offer refreshments? Are you guys just going to stand around?
Is there going to be an open bar?
No.
With the last town hall meeting, this is just, we're just providing a room and affording the opportunity for the community to come and ask individual questions. This isn't a debate.
No,
This
it's
is
like an open house.
It's not a.
It's just a meet and greet.
Yeah,
That's.
talk to me if I'm there.
So we'll throw a few tables out and chairs
And I don't think but I don't.
What day does that date fall?
It's not, and you have to put money into something like that. So I mean, even like the refreshments,
correct.
and we're only there an hour.
It's only an hour, so we'll just throw out a few tables and chairs.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And it's commonly done around the state, and as long as you're not, spending money to urge electors to vote for one candidate or another, the fact is pretty well noted that the fact that the lights are on and the heat is on
It's hospitable.
is not a violation of the law.
Okay.
And I would even say if you provided coffee for everyone on a cold night, that is fine. Come on, in any event, so I'm not worried about that.
Okay, maybe just for the staff.
That's it.
Okay. Whoever, and you guys will all be there, will you be there?
Yeah, no, I'll do
I'll be there. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I like these people.
Well, so as long as we're talking about,
Yes.
as long as we're talking about videos, will there be video available?
No. This isn't an official business meeting. It is not a board meeting. This is just a meet and greet of the candidates.
It would be nice to see for lots of people who can't get there.
Well, unfortunately, we're holding it at the community center. We're not going to have to be able to provide video. Sorry.
Can it be recorded and then put on YouTube later?
No.
It's an individual conversation, Deanna. I would anticipate if someone is there and approaches me, that it's gonna be a one-on-one conversation or one-on-two conversation, and they're gonna go talk to somebody.
It's gonna be our goal,
Mix and mingle. So.
Email me and ask me the questions, and the Ward 3 Selectmen candidate, I would be happy respond to them on email or I can call them. I guess that's the only way we can put it out to people who aren't here in the community.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. I think that covers everything we wanted to cover today and probably more. It is 9:10 PM and it's been moved and seconded.
Twice.
Okay, was there a second?
I'll take.
Okay. 9:10, moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.